what's on the rest of the street, or are they gonna match the one that?
Good evening, everyone. Today is August 2nd, 2023. Thank you for attending this evening's Town of Amherst Traffic Safety Board. First order of business is just introduction of those that are here this evening on the board. I am Eric Fraz, Chairman, and we will go in this direction tonight.
Kristen Goss?
Mark Storch, member.
Maxwell Kahn, member.
Dan Ryder, member.
Kevin Cantwell, member.
Ken Smith, member.
Bill Predival from the Building Department.
Tom Voigt. I'm normally the liaison from the Planning Department. However, tonight I will be your MC. I'm filling in for Chris Schragle from our Engineering Department and the Traffic Safety Coordinator.
All right.
And my name is Mike Zucala. I'm an Amherst Town Board member and the liaison to this committee.
Okay. So our first order of business this evening is just to go over the minutes from our last meeting. Thank you. Oh, yep. Also, before we get into the minutes for the last meeting, just order of business is, should an alarm sound in the building, the emergency exits are to my left, your right out the doors where you came in, and then exit to the front or rear of the building. And they just ask if that the alarm does go off, that nobody does use the elevators. So stand by the stairwells if you would ordinarily need the elevator. Just ground rules we got to cover. So with that, our first order of business this evening is just to review the minutes from our June meeting. There is no Traffic Safety Board meeting in July. So the minutes that we have are from the June 14th, 2023 meeting. And I will open it up to the board if there are any comments, changes, modifications to those minutes. We're getting better at these every month. Fewer and fewer changes. None being heard, is there a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Second.
Motion from Kevin, second from Dan. Any further conversations? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Minutes carried 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 0. Okay, so with that, we will get into this evening's agenda. And for those that are in the audience this evening, where did my agenda go? For those of you that are in the audience this evening, just to let you know, we do not go over the agenda. We do not go in the order of the agenda for this meeting. When you came in this evening, there was a sign-in sheet. If you are here for any of the topics that are on the agenda, we go through the order of the agenda based on how people are signed in for the meeting. After all of the people that are here that are signed in for the meeting, we will then go into any of the business on the agenda that has not been covered. So when the time comes, we will first review the items so that everyone's aware of the topic that we are talking about. Then we will open up the public comment section. And at that point, we will call you up to speak if you want to speak. We ask that you come up to the podium, state your name and address for the minutes of the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and streamed live, so we just ask that you give that information so we have that along with the minutes. With that, we all received a nice, extremely large packet this month of all the copies of the correspondence that you've had with the town on the agenda item that is on the agenda for this evening. So there's no reason for you to reiterate anything that you've already stated to the town. When you come up to speak, you'll be granted 3 minutes to speak for that public comment period. We have a bell here on the counter, on the table. We'll give you a single ring at about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, let you know it's kind of your 30-second warning. And then with that, we'll give you a double ding at 3 minutes to let you know that your time is up. As we go through the minutes, after everybody has the public comment time, we will then in turn close the public comment period. We will then open the conversation up to here on the board. At that time that happens, if we do have any questions for you, anybody that spoke, if we didn't ask them to you while you were speaking, we may ask you some additional information or additional questions while we're talking about the agenda item. With that, just so everybody is aware as well, this is an advisory committee to the town board. We do not make any laws, we do not make any ordinances, so anything that this board does recommend would be in turn referred to the town board. That's why Council Member Zucala is here. Anything that we recommend would be put forward before the town board in the form of a resolution. If that were to happen, there's an additional public comment period that happens at the town board when that resolution is up. And council members Akala or Chris Schriegel, who's not here this evening, will follow up with you should your agenda item go to the town board to give you all the dates that it will be on the town board meeting should it move to there. If your agenda item does not require any town board action and it's just information that needs to go to one of the town departments to take action, we will refer that to the town board for those actions. So as we go through your agenda item this evening, when we finish it up and wrap up, we'll let you know where your item stands and what the next steps of it will be. With that, I think I've got everything covered. And we will start with the, ironically, item number 1 on the agenda tonight is the first item that we have here, which is for Garnett Road, which is for a parking restriction on one side. Ordinarily, Chris would go through these. Tom, are you going to kind of give the Chris background story?
Yeah, so the town received correspondence noting some issues around visibility near Garnett Park during the busier times when the ball fields are in use. Just to orient you quick, this is a dead-end road that dead ends at the ball fields. There's residential on both sides. There's a rather large parking lot to accommodate the park. This is a standard width town road. As you can see now, this is kind of the outlay of the street. What I would like to do for this one, I think, is have the resident come up and speak first before you guys get into your discussion.
Okay, so with that, we will open up the public comment period. The first person that we have signed in for this evening on this agenda item is Maria Krajewski. Krajewski.
Good evening. My name is Maria Krajewski. I live at 24 Garnett. When I purchased the home, it was a quiet dead-end street. There was hardly any traffic, no foot traffic. Unbeknownst to us, I don't know who opened the park to the public, to a traveling baseball league. It has been nothing but mayhem. Every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they've taken over our neighborhood. We can't sit in our backyards and enjoy quiet. There's so much noise. My car was hit by a baseball player with no note, causing $5,500 damage while it was parked in front of my own house. There have been several neighbors that have come out and discussed with me that they have to go out and tell the people that park to move back because they're parked in their driveways, literally parked in their driveways. I've had to get safety cones and put them at the end of my driveway because they're constantly coming down the dead-end street, realizing that there's no parking, and then turning around in my driveway and then going back. There's a ton of Super Duty trucks that park and give us zero visibility. I've almost been hit pulling out of my own driveway. Also, a gentleman down the street has had his mirror torn off of his truck by the baseball team. I do believe that doing parking on one side is just putting a Band-Aid on a major problem. I believe that we need to end the lease with the baseball league and give us back our peace and quiet on our street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have other people signed in for this item this evening. Bob Adamski?
My name is Bob Adamski. I live at 34 Garnett Road. It is a safety hazard, I believe, when the diamonds are in use. Their cars are parked, double parked sometimes, and there's only one lane down the center of the road, and even that's difficult. When the games are changing over and teams are leaving the parking lot, you'll have a long line of cars coming out. Nobody from Delwood can go onto the street until they've all come out, and they never pause and let somebody into their driveway. I do have a few photographs here. I don't know if you want to see them. You can have them. They show parked over the edge of a driveway, parked in front of the fire hydrant, and just how close they are on both sides of driveways, so that it's difficult to get out, especially since you can't see beyond the cars.
Right.
So you have to kind of pull out slowly and hope that if there is somebody coming, they'll catch you coming out of your driveway and let you out. See, they're parked on the edge of the driveway there, and a couple others are heaven forbid, there's an accident, there's a ball player gets hurt, it would be difficult to get emergency vehicles down the center of that street because they are literally taking up every available space on the street. So, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay,
You can keep the photos.
thank you. Also signed in is Margaret Adamski. Did you like to speak as well, or no? We have Jake Duggan? Duggan?
Yeah, I'm here, that's for a different matter.
You're for? Kmart, okay. It says item 1. Okay, is there anyone else here in the audience this evening that would like to speak on this agenda item? None being heard or seen, we will close the public comment section at this time. The first order of business that I will tell you is that this board is a traffic safety board. We have no jurisdiction, no say over who uses the town park, the lease of the town park, who gave them permission. Those are items that you can take up with the town recreation department, or you can address them with Councilmember Zucala. Those are items that are outside of our purview. What we are able to address here is the items of the traffic and safety concerns created by the events that are going on in that park. With that, what I'll also say is any action that we do take this evening for this item most likely would have to go before the town board, but we also have to take into consideration as we work on this item. Most likely whatever we do or recommend for your street is going to push the problem, right? So what ends up happening as we put a parking restriction in place for an agenda item like this, right now the people are parking on Garnett, which is going to restrict them from parking there, create additional issues. Those cars are going to need someplace to go, so it'll probably push it on to, what is that, Delwood Road, right? So we'll probably be talking about that item as well up here for additional things that may need to be done on that street as we take care of this individual street as well, okay? So just want to point that out to you. We've closed the public comment section, so we'll talk here, and if we have any questions, we'll let you speak at that point. So with that, I'll open it up to Tom. I think
Yep.
you had additional information.
Yep, I'll jump back in here. So this is something that the engineering department put together as, well, what Chris put on the agenda as a parking restriction on the north side of Garnett. This here is the existing street layout, which is, you know, a single drive lane. People are parking on both sides. You know, a typical curb lawn and sidewalk on both sides. And then with the parking restriction on the north side, this is what the street would turn into: 2 legitimate drive lanes for ingress and egress out of Garnett with parking on the south side of the street.
So with that, I'll also point out that the town is built based on these drawings that are up here. The town is built to the town recommendation and town code of 28-foot width. The minimum drive lanes are 10 feet. So when you put that 8-foot parking lane in on one side, that creates your 2 drive lanes with your parking lane for the 28-foot width of the street. So the town, there is nothing with the street at this point that it's narrower than normal or anything of that nature. It is built to town standards.
When engineering did this, which side is the fire hydrant on? Is it the north or the south? It's on the north side. It's on the north side, so that would be the side that we want to restrict, to keep people from parking in front of.
Right. Ordinarily, when we place a parking restriction on the street, we look for the side of the street that has the fire hydrants, and you restrict on that side of the street.
Is there more than one fire hydrant, or is it just the one? All right.
So the one issue that we do have with this particular street is with the parking lot in the location where it is, the fire hydrant is on the side of the parking lot versus on the side of the driveways, right? So the question comes up is, are we better served to put the parking restriction on the side of the driveways with the house, which then puts the fire hydrant as well? That way it would keep your driveways, the cars from over parking your driveways so you can get out. That's just one of the things to point out here. It's kind of that back and forth that this board here will discuss as to which is the preferred way to do it.
So if there's parking restriction on our side, then are you telling me I can't park in front of my own house?
You'd have to park across the street. That's what we are, ordinarily, the direction that's made is that the parking restriction would be placed on the side of the street where the fire hydrants are. What we are taking into consideration here is that because that side of the street is longer and would potentially permit more parking, and because of the small gaps in between the driveways of the houses where the cars are parked, to put the parking restriction on the side where the driveways are. So there'd be no parking in front of your house, but there would be parking allowed across the street. So
We're gonna have to park on Dellwood and walk to our own.
no, no. What we are saying is that the north side of the street is where the parking lot is. The south side of the street is where your houses are. So if we put a parking restriction on the street, we are not recommending at this point parking restriction on both sides of the street. We're recommending a parking restriction, if that's the direction we take, would be a parking restriction based on that drawing on one side of the street. One side would be restricted, the other side would still allow parking. So looking at that drawing, that's for the conversation here for this board. Would the recommendation be to, if you look at that the way it's drawn right now, where the houses, I think we're looking right now saying that the parking restriction, we have to decide which side of the street to put the parking restriction.
That is not going to support the issue. We still need to be able to park in front of our own houses. We do. So if there's a restriction, are you going to give us a resident card to put in
No.
our windshield so that we don't get a ticket?
The options that we have is, the options before us right now are to leave the situation the way that it is, a parking restriction on one side of the street, which means you would be able to park on one side of your street, or we can do a parking restriction on both sides of the street, which means nobody would ever be allowed to park on your street. At this point, I don't believe the residents that are here in this room are in favor of a double-sided parking restriction on the street. So we want a parking restriction. The ask at this point would be for a parking restriction on one side of the street.
I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for the lease to be terminated.
That is not for this board to decide. This board has no say over that particular agenda item. That would be an item to go before the Recreation Department or something before the town board. The other action that we can take at this point is we can take no action and leave it as is and leave the parking under the current state where it is. Those are the options that we have before us.
Do you only have this problem during baseball season? How many months
It's
out of the year?
only June, July, and August, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. I can't even, when I come home from church, I can't even get in my own driveway. It's just mayhem. And the baseball, moms and dads have spoke to me, the grandmothers have spoke to me, and they can't stand coming to Garnett. There's no concessions, the parking is awful, nobody is happy.
Again, that is not an issue before this board. We are talking about the traffic.
So Eric, if
So-
it's only a 3-month thing, and I wouldn't even need to do anything about parking because
Correct.
her concerns should be, not a traffic and safety.
So
So
if I,
so we can, again, we can table this item if you'd like to, and we can say that we are going to receive and file this item, and you can take it before the town board and the Recreation Department to address the lease, or we can continue to have the conversation regarding the parking. I'll leave that to the
So,
residents
Eric-
that are here this evening as to which direction you'd prefer us to take
Eric,
at this
if I
point.
could- If I could jump in for a second.
Go ahead.
Is it possible you could have the restriction just for those 3 months?
So
Restrict one side of the street?
we can do a parking restriction however we want to. We can restrict it just for the summer months, but realize that during the winter months, you're already restricted overnight anyway. We can do the parking restriction where it's just Friday through Sunday. We can do the parking restriction where it's Thursday through Sunday. We can pick the days of the week. That's what we're here to decide this evening as to what we want to do. There's nothing that says that it needs to be 24/7. With that being said, we have another agenda item this evening regarding another park and baseball diamonds where they have a parking restriction that's only set for, I believe it's May 1st through August, and they're asking for that to be extended now because baseball season has extended. They're playing games in September and October. So when you put that parking restriction in place and we pick a time period to do it because of the baseball field or whatever that may be, if the baseball team plays a game in October, if the baseball team plays a game in April, your parking restriction doesn't apply. If the baseball league changes their schedule and they start playing games on Monday nights and Tuesday nights, parking restriction doesn't apply. We can set the parking restriction after 3 p.m. We have multiple options that we can do here. But regarding the baseball team using the park It's a public park. That's up to the town to decide how they want to use the public park. That's not a traffic safety board issue. That would be the Amherst Police Department. Once the signs are posted, you can contact the Amherst Police Department if cars are parked illegally, and if we had Captain Brown here with us tonight, if there's officers available, I'm sure he will happily dispatch them over there to write parking tickets.
I do not believe that.
So we're going to close the public comment period at this time so we can address other people's agendas on this item tonight. I know you're upset about the park being used, but again, for the last time, we are not discussing the use of the park. With that, is there any conversation for the board as to where we'd like to put a parking restriction in place? Or would we like to put one in place at all?
Is the problem here of a game ending and a game starting at approximately the same time, so we get the overlap of parents and cars more so than during the game?
Sir, when I pulled up on Friday, there was already cars in front of my house at 10 a.m. And then the woman told me there was going to be 2 more games. So I believe, to the best of my knowledge, there's 3 games a day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday presently. There's more than 3 games a day. I've been corrected.
Well, I'm asking about the starting and ending times for a game. Is there an overlap? I happen to have been involved in child's soccer quite heavily a few years ago. And we had problems with fields and parking because of too many families there at one time. And that's because we had the team that just finished exiting and the team that's scheduled to play arriving at the same time, with double the traffic.
I can just assure you that I would encourage everyone to come because it's mayhem. I can't get out of my driveway.
Well, I understand you can't get out of your driveway. I'm trying to get to the root cause of that.
Super Duty trucks, where it blocks our view, we have to pray when we're going out of our driveway. My company refuses.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you, ma'am, to please stop. Okay? I would like to address this issue tonight, and you're continuing to complain about the items before you that we can't address. Okay? Councilmember Zucala is over here. If you'd like to talk about the use of the park, feel free to talk to him after the meeting. I'm sure he'll have a conversation with you. But we would like to address the matter before us, which is the parking issue.
And I do not believe that there should be a parking restriction. I do not.
Okay, you've made your point. You are not in favor of a parking restriction on the street, which means what you have right now will stay. Rest of the board conversation here.
So Eric, from a process standpoint, if we were to recommend a parking restriction, regardless of what it looked like, it would then go to the town board, and then there would be a public hearing where everybody would be notified to attend?
Anybody, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, any house that's within 600 feet of the parking restriction would be notified of the town board action.
Yes, there is notification requirements for a public hearing. I'm unsure if the town board's requirements are 600 feet, but I believe they are.
Full length of the street.
Well, I mean,
To cover the full length of the street and anybody within 600 feet of the street.
what we could do is we could recommend the restriction, knowing full well it's not going to fly, but then it goes to the town board and then it's out there.
I wouldn't say it's not
Is-
going to fly.
Is there a way for this to get on the town board agenda without us making any recommendation?
Yes, Councilmember Zucala could put the resolution before the board, but you'd probably look for
For a
a
recommendation?
recommendation of where the parking
Okay.
restriction would be.
In fact, I would do exactly that, yes. It's the reason this board exists.
So we have
Thank you.
2 people that spoke this evening, and I believe one is opposed to a parking restriction, the other is in favor of a parking restriction. So for the member that is, resident that's here this evening that is in favor of the parking restriction, which side of the street would be your preference for a parking restriction?
Well, because of the fire hydrant being on the north side, I would assume the north side would be the most logical.
But
There
that,
are driveways on both sides of the street, so it's not an issue.
Correct. I'm just looking at this map here. If you look at the side where the park is, you would be able to park pretty much 1 car, maybe 2 cars in front of all those houses, and then you'd have the interruptions because of the driveways. If you park them on the other side of the street, you don't have the driveway gaps in there, which is going to allow for more cars to park, which creates the likelihood of fewer cars parking illegally because you're giving more options for cars to park.
The parking lot that you see for the diamond there, that is the north side, is the
Yeah.
side I'm recommending.
That you would want restricted.
I have another quick question here. Does the parking overflow onto Snyder Woods that way and Delwood that way already, or is it just Garnet?
No, as far as I know, nobody puts into Snyder Woods. But it does occasionally overflow onto Delwood.
Okay, so, all right.
Is there any parking restriction?
Put in a parking lot on Delwood for the Delwood Park.
Well, there is one there. There is one in Delwood for the Delwood Park.
It's very small, it's probably.
I know, but it is there.
Tom, Chris would know the answer to this one. We already have parking restrictions on Delwood, don't we?
I thought there were, but we took them away. I know we voted on it.
I know.
Something.
We did something on Delwood.
We reversed whatever it was.
All right, I think we flipped them. Do you know the residents, do you know if there was parking restrictions on parts of Delwood, and we did?
A lot of it was loosened in the last couple of years.
Yeah, because it was restricted on both sides.
It was restricted around the park itself.
We've seen Delwood before here.
Yeah. I'm just trying to remember what we did there.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any signposts.
Right. So is there a motion from anyone here on the board for placement of a parking restriction?
I would be in favor, and my recommendation from a safety standpoint would be to allow parking on the north side, and then we would still restrict it in front of the fire hydrant per regulations. But that way, we wouldn't have the overlap on the driveways, and it would allow people to get in and out of their driveways safer. And there is more capacity on the north side, given that there are fewer driveways. That's my opinion.
So is that your?
Do we
My
want to,
recommendation would be to put a restriction
is that
on
a-
the south
is
side
that a-
only.
You said recommendation.
Yeah.
Is that the motion, or is that your recommendation?
I'd like to hear what the other board members have to say.
I would agree that I would be more in favor of a parking restriction on the
south side?
south side, allowing parking on the north side, and then putting a parking restriction in place from the fire hydrant to the other end of that driveway, right? So you'd allow parking on the south side. I'm sorry, you would allow parking on the north side of the street with the exception of
The fire hydrant.
the fire hydrant, but just block it from, so you don't have a car sneaking in between the fire hydrant and the driveway. Just put a parking restriction that's 5 feet from one end of the fire hydrant to 10 feet on the other end of the driveway. So that you keep the driveway clear for cars getting out.
Do we want to further modify the restriction to weekends between, what, May, April? When's baseball season?
I don't think it's as prudent to put any type of time restriction on it, given the fact that they have the right to just extend their season whenever. I mean,
Yeah,
All right,
I think from get right out of the gate, just restrict it on one side and don't restrict it from the calendar, and then when it goes to the public at the board level.
I believe based on the number of houses on the street and the other parking restrictions that we have in the town that are identical to that, that should you do the parking restriction on one side of the street, there would still be plenty of parking on the street for every other day of the week outside of the events.
what? Oh, no, that's just the dead end.
Yeah, I was making sure there's no parking posted in the bulb.
So I'll make the motion to do, as I said, for a parking restriction on the south side of the street and a parking restriction on the north side of the street
Just on the
for-
fire hydrant.
to clear the fire hydrant on the east side, no, west side, to clear the fire hydrant on the west side of the driveway and for 10 feet on the other side of the driveway for clear vision exiting the parking lot. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Jennifer. Open to the board for further conversation.
Can I ask a question? Sure. How does one turn around? If we've got cars coming in there, it's only, excuse me, becomes like a cul-de-sac or what have you. How do you get the car out and over onto the proper side to park?
The turnaround bulb at the end, down where we have the parking already restricted in the turnaround bulb.
Thank you.
Even if we did the parking restriction the other way, they would still have to go down to that point to turn around when they leave. So it'd just be, they'd be turning around when they come in rather than when they leave.
I would agree with the motion, but I also think, and I know this isn't our purview, but like the programming on that ball fields needs to be changed.
We can't.
Because no, I'm just telling them, these people are absolutely correct. And it is probably one of the worst parking situations I've been at in the last 10 years in going to softball games. So they're correct. And I think you can do that.
And it doesn't help that there's two ball fields there, too.
It's certainly something we can suggest.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the question of the resident that's here in the room. Based on the recommendation that we're making to the town board, if this were to go, if this gets passed by us and goes before the town board, will you support it at the town board meeting, or will you request the town board to flip the parking restriction that we're recommending to be the other way?
No, I would support it. One side of the street is the same as the other as far as it goes.
Okay.
I prefer they don't, I'm on the north side, and I prefer they don't park over the edge of my driveway. It becomes difficult. But really, only when there are cars on the other side of the street too that block it. As long as there's no cars on the other side of the street, you should still be able to swing out.
Okay. The only reason why I'm asking this question is because we can word the resolution to the town board in a different way, because if this goes before the town board recommending what we've stated, and the residents show up at the meeting in opposition to it and want it the other way, the town board doesn't have the ability to flip it to the opposite side of the street if that's what the residents support when more residents are at the town board meeting. If the residents are in favor of, if the residents do that, then it would have to come back before this board for another recommendation, another referral, which would delay the entire process. So I'm just leaving that up here to the board if we want to reword the motion in a way that basically makes it an either-or recommendation for the town board to then ask Councilmember DeScala on this, because we've had this happen before where we've made a recommendation and went before the town board and then had to come back, and it just delays the whole process by about 2 months.
Say that again, because
We could put two resolutions before the town board. We've done it before, where we write one up for a parking restriction on the south side, write one up for the north side, goes before the town board, and then you pass one and you you deny the other.
you can do that as long as the board recommends one of the two solutions that you're doing, right?
We're recommending the north, but I just want to give you the option at that meeting that if the residents want it the other way, you have the ability to make that change.
That makes sense to do that.
We both live on the north side, and the reason why we're here is because people are parking and they're blocking our driveways and we can't get out on the north side. So why would there be parking on the north side? That doesn't appease anybody.
Because when we open this up to the town board and it goes before all the residents on the street and all the residents on the south side of the street show up, there's going to be a lot more conversation.
I also like having the restriction, how we discussed it, because this way, if they're parked on the north side and the game is over, they're all pointed in the right direction to get out of there.
Yeah, that's true. It's
Then you
just
don't have
turning
cars
around.
coming in, trying to turn around and leave and everything else.
That's huge, actually. That's a very good point. Because what's going to happen is everyone's going to have to go into the other bowl, turn around and go, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, it's a mess.
Okay. So with that, we're going to modify the motion.
Two motions.
We're going to modify the motion for the Town Traffic Safety Board is recommending the resolution of a parking restriction on the north side, on the south side, recommending a parking restriction on the south side of the street as proposed. However, the Traffic Safety Board is also in agreement with a parking restriction on the north side of the street, should the residents that come before the town board ask for that in its place. So when the resolution goes before the town board, there'll be two drawings that are presented as part of the motion before the town board, giving the town board the final say in the matter as to which way they do the parking restriction. But the recommendation from this board is for a parking restriction on the south side of the street, allowing parking on the north side.
Second.
Second.
So that's my motion. Second from Jennifer. Any further conversation? None being heard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 8-0. So with that, Chris Riegel, when he is back in the office, will write up the motion that will then go before Councilmember Zucala to present to the town board. When that gets presented to the town board, it will then set a public hearing, and then from there, it'll go from there. So I don't know when the next town board meeting is.
Monday, but I don't believe this will be on Monday.
Right, it's too late. So it'll be September 21st, where the public hearing would be set, which would probably be for the meeting after that, which would be the first week in October, is probably when that'll happen. So it's a parking restriction that would go in place for next year. Okay?
I believe August 21st.
I'm sorry, August 21st. August 21st meeting, which would then put the public hearing probably the first or second week of September. Okay? Chris will probably follow up with you, or you can reach out to Chris Schregel at the engineering office for those dates. Okay?
Since this isn't completely entirely a parking issue, you have an issue with, this falls in the purview of other departments, and they might be the better ones to talk to in the end.
Those other departments would be the issues related to the park itself and the use of the park, the scheduling in the park, and the other issues that you have. And Councilmember Zucala, I think, has heard loud and clear the issues this evening as well. Okay, so with that, we will close agenda item number 1, and we will move to the next item that people are signed in for, which is agenda number 5, which is Kmart Drive, request for parking restrictions along the curve limits. Yep, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, so Chris received a request to take a look at this bend on Kmart Drive just north of Edgewater for visibility issues around the curve, understandably so. So that's for a parking restriction on either side. So that's what the purview of your board will be tonight. There was a ball bank study. I'll display that here. So along with the parking restriction, you're also going to be looking at curve advisory signs.
You said the street does meet the requirements for the curve advisory sign. That's currently not there.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can see that the recommended sign here is W1-1, which is, less than or equal to 30 miles an hour, the left turn curve advisory sign. Yeah, so the recommended sign based on the street is this W1-1, which is, I don't know if you can see my cursor up here in the corner. That is a sign for less than or equal to 30 miles an hour around the curve, and it's a left arrow, so it would be on the east side of the street going into the curve headed northbound.
It puts one in both directions. You got a left sign and a right sign. So if you look in the box up there where it says 1W1, it's showing your left and your right, so it's posted on both sides going into the curve. So with that, we will open up the public comment on this particular agenda item, which is agenda item number 5, and we have Katie Swanek. You want to just come on up? Come up to the podium here.
So I'm Katie Swanek, so I live at 59 Kmart. I moved in a couple years ago, right before Mr. Duggan. Sorry.
Yep, there you go.
So for sure there is an issue at that turn. Parking, yes, but also it's along the whole street. There's people and it's always the same cars speeding through. I mean, God forbid, like one of our kids are on the street, they're going to get hit. It's not visibility, it's speed. We have college kids, and I was speaking to another resident that lives across the street that can tell you more when he comes up. But I agree, parking, yes, to like maybe one side or something for speed. But a lot of our residents that are in the area are in a lot of the apartment buildings, in the doubles, and some of them, honestly, they come in from overseas, go right through stop signs. I don't even know if they'll understand what that turn signal would mean to slow down. So I think more than that has to be done. I don't know if there's I was looking at speed bumps, but it sounds like Amherst, you guys don't allow it. But radar, something. People, I mean, ever since COVID, people don't listen to rules. People don't care. But it's safe. It's safety. So if you remove cars, it's going to increase speed. I don't know if you heard about the accident that happened. They actually hit Mr. Duggan's car minutes after. I mean, his wife just got out of the car with the kids. Thankfully, nobody was severely hurt. But there was no cars in that area around that turn at that time. And that car slammed right into another car. So I think more has to be done other than just parking. So that's just my aspect of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Maxwell?
Hi, I'm Bob Maxwell. I live at 66, which is right across the street from 59. We've been there for 32 years, and there's actually two issues. The one is the visibility issue on the inside curve. The other is, like Katie said, the speed. When this came up and we got the letter, can you put up Willow Ridge neighborhood? I drove the neighborhood. It's way up the upper left. I drove the neighborhood and looked around. There's actually 10 right-angle streets in the neighborhood that aren't intersections. I can see them. I don't know if you guys can make them all out. But 3 of them down here right at the bottom. Right there where your cursor is. And then go to the other corner of that, right there. And then go up by the elementary school where it says playground, by the P of playground. To the left, right there. Those 3 are all signed, no parking. On both, well, the one down in the lower left, thanks, Mike, you're good. The one in the lower left is only on the outside. The other 2 are signed to be both sides. Also, on Edgewater, it's like a zigzag. They have those caution signs that show a zigzag coming. Those are signed. Those are sharp. All 5 of those are sharp 90 degrees where you come down and then you turn. It's not a gentle 90 degrees. The other 5 in the neighborhood, there's one on Beaumont, there's one on Gene Moore, there's 2 of them up at the loop of Green, Willow Green, way up, still out of your picture, right there. Just under, yeah, right there. And then the 5th one is Kmart. Kmart is different because those 4 are destinations. People are going to their houses. They're residential streets. Nobody's driving through there. If you look at the map, the way it's set up where Kmart is, if you can go back to where Kmart is in the red thing there, that street, people come in Willow Ridge and they feed probably 40 to 50% of the south half of this neighborhood. You can see they come in from Willow Ridge off of the boulevard, turn on the Sweetwood, go up Kmart. That's a straightaway that's long enough for people to pick up speed. My recommendation was going to be, because of the speed, you put those yellow signs in like you said, but one step further would be right in front of my house, which is 66, put a signpost with just arrows, like you would see, just a single arrow, right somewhere in that neighborhood, so that if I'm driving this way, I see that I'm going left. If I come the other way, I see that I'm going right. That takes away, there's been people drive up into trees. My tree's been hit. There's people that drive into the driveways because they're going too fast. So speed is an issue. The other thing, though, is like Katie said, there is a visibility issue. This is a gentle curve, but it's a 90-degree curve. And if we park almost right where you have it, from this tree over to those garbage cans on the left side, you're cutting off the angle, and there's a lot of kids. There's a new generation of kids. When our kids grew up, they're 35 and 40 and out of the neighborhood now. Jake has young kids. If there's cars there and somebody's coming fast around that corner and somebody just steps out to get a soccer ball or a Frisbee or their dog moves, they're likely to get hit. And we don't want that to happen. God forbid, we just had the car get hit the other day. Nobody in the neighborhood was hurt, so that, you know, but it was a police chase that actually caused it. But the speed is an issue, so we need to do something. I like to see that you guys have already looked at the yellow caution signs, but if you do restrict parking, it's not fair to anybody to go all the way down and make two houses up the street on either side not be able to park there, because we've been there 32 years and we've been able to do it forever. But I'm suggesting about where your cursor is, maybe at the front of Katie's fence, around to just between those 2 driveways on the inside
that gives clear view where the kids are. There's also kids across the street, so we're taking care of a safety issue both ways with those yellow signs and the kids. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jim Evans, would you like to speak?
Jim Evans. I live at 54 Kmart. I've lived there for just about 40 years. You know, those 40 years that I've lived there, I've only seen one collision with a parked car on the street, and that happened 3 weeks ago. And it was a result of the incident that Bob was talking about, where the burglars were.
Use the microphone, please.
Okay. Well, I've lived there for almost 40 years. In those 40 years, I've only seen one collision with a parked car, and it happened 3 weeks ago. And that collision was caused by some burglars speeding in excess of twice the speed limit down Kmart, and they hit a parked car in front of my house. And if you look at 54 Kmart, I'm not on the curb, actually. The curb in front of my house is completely diagonal to the end of the street. It's in line with the street all the way down. So it had nothing to do with parking on the curb that those people hit that car. And that's the only collision I've seen in almost 40 years. I have seen a couple of incidents where people have slid off the road in the winter and gone over the curb. And one time they hit a tree next to where I live. But there was no one got hurt, and there was very little damage done. And I've seen other incidents where people have come down the street, but this is in the winter, and there's snow on the ground, usually in the morning before the street's been cleared perfectly. And people will lose control right at the end of the curve and spin around and maybe hit the curb. Or once I saw someone hit the light pole, but did very little damage. But in my opinion, I don't think it's justified to limit parking on the outside of the curve. I think it's justified. I didn't say that correctly. I think it's justified if you limit parking on the outside of the curve, but not the straight portions of the street like where I live. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. We also have Jake Duggan.
Hey guys, so I live at 51 Kmart. I'm pretty much in agreement with everybody here. You know, I see where everybody's coming from as far as the inside curve. There's obviously some large trees there too. So to not be able to park there, which not very many people do anyways, I don't think it would be too bad of an idea. You know, it's only the summer months. We have very short summers in this city anyways. I live at 51. I don't want any sort of restrictions on parking in front of my home, which is a straight away. I don't know how that works as far as the distance of when they have to start the no parking, if you can really narrow it down to just that curve or not. I also want to suggest that, you know, in parts of Williamsville here, there are speed humps, which would be excellent in that area because people do speed all the way down from the other end of Kmart. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see it's not a four-way parking, four-way stop sign there. It's just a two-way, which I think is dangerous because people do come flying up. You know, well, I guess I'm wrong on this. Yeah.
What he's trying to say is people come from the duplexes, college kids, they come out Kmart, they slow down and drive through the stop sign.
Yeah. So, you know, I was wondering if it would be something that they could budget to put in some speed humps that would be, and just overall reduce the speed there beyond just the parking. you know, at this, to have, I don't know, there's really not much parking that happens on that curve anyways. So even if, I mean, the visibility would be the only thing I think it would help. It wouldn't help just by restricting parking will not restrict speed there. Another proposal I've heard that I don't know if it would go over well with the entire population of the neighborhood is just to simply reduce the speed limits in Willow Ridge in general. I have 2 small children. I put up those goofy signs, you know, small, slow down. Nobody listens to, nobody pays attention to those. Sometimes they even steal them. Yeah, I just don't like, I have my, you know, babysitters. I have my mother comes over, they park in the street. I don't want that. I want to play musical cars if I can avoid it. So I don't want a restriction in front of my house or directly across the street from my house. Thank you.
And we also have Barb Kubiak.
I'm Barb Kubiak. I live at 13 Marycrest Drive. I'm the one that put in the request because if you back out, I live past Edgewater. It's the first street that you turn in right there, Marycrest. So I have a different perspective. I actually come out and have to drive Kmart, stop at the stop sign, which I believe has also been recommended to become a 4-way stop, but I'm not sure about that. So I'm driving this direction to hit the curve, and I think we're all in agreement that the visibility issue on the interior curve is probably something that needs to be looked at. When I spoke to Chris, he said that the recommendation had to go forward to have parking restrictions on both sides, which I'm not in favor of. I think if we could just maybe get a little bit of parking restriction on the interior, that would probably solve the visibility issue. Because where I'm coming from, if there are cars parked on that curve, it is difficult to see. And there are sometimes cars parked on the exterior, so we're slowing down anyways to get through, and I see the signs all the time. So, and I know you guys have kids out. Bob's had a lot of work done on his house, and I understand there's a lot of vehicles in and out that have to service these places also. But if we could get them to park on the exterior, then when you're coming and heading that direction from Kmart, you know, it would be better visibility to see around the curb as we have to exit the neighborhood, because I too am one of the people that has to come in, and that's my main thoroughfare unless I'm actually coming up Edgewater. As far as the speeding, yeah, they pick up at the stop sign and they come flying by my house too, but I can only do so much about that. So my recommendation, like I said, was just to maybe look at something on the interior. I thought Chris said something about 600 feet, which I know is a huge crimp for you guys, because you do have, you know, people that park in front of your homes, and, you know, people that visit. I have them too. I have a huge landscaping truck that parks in front of my home every day. It's not mine, it's my neighbor's. But so I understand everybody's inconvenienced by not having that parking, but I'm more concerned with the visibility, because these guys do have small kids out playing in their yards all the time, and I think the last thing we want to see is for anybody to have any visibility issues coming around that. So
Okay.
you don't even have to ding me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else in the crowd this evening that would like to speak on this agenda item? None being heard or seen, we'll close the public comment section and have a little conversation up here. A lot was said through all of that, so hopefully we can hit everything on this. First thing I'm going to do is discuss the W1-1 sign for that corner, since this item was brought before us. There's actually another agenda item that we have this evening, which is for Briar Hollow curve warning signs, which is a new development in the town to place those curve advisory signs. What would happen now in the town is if there was a new development that was going in that had these curves in them, there's a ball bank study that needs to be done kind of after the road is built. So normally these signs are not placed as part of the initial development plan of the developer, because you have to test to see what sign advisories should be based on the street banking and everything else that's there once it's built and constructed. So because this was brought before the town, Chris and the engineering department did go look at that area. They did do the ball bank study. They did do what was there, which is why they're recommending the placement of the W1-1 sign, which would match the other signs in the town with that curve. So with that, I'll make a motion for the installation of the for the WWE.
Eric, to expand on that, the arrow sign that you suggested,
that.
that's based on a different speed recommendation. So the engineering department, there's certain signs that you can put up based on the speeds, and based on the speed study, the sign that was recommended is only what's allowed. So even though the arrow might seem like it's appropriate, it's not appropriate at the speed that was studied, that was
There's
done.
a book that's out there that's the MUT. Hold on one second. There's a book that's out there that's the MUTCD, and that's the book that the engineering department of the town and basically New York State has to follow for the placement of signs. So that's where the recommendation of this sign is coming from. Just hold on one second. So with that, I'm making that motion for the installation of those W1-1 signs. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion from me and a second from Dan. With that, we'll now open things up for further conversation. So,
My thought with the arrow sign was just to let people know at night there's a barrier here. I mean, that tree was hit by somebody going straight.
right, so that, like Jennifer said, that sign, there's a bunch of parameters that have to be established in order for that sign to be placed. And right now, based on what's been done, it doesn't meet the requirements for that sign to be placed.
My next thing is going to be a reflector just put on the pole. Just a pole with a reflector so that at night you see it because it's dark and we don't know.
That's the book that we got to follow. Okay.
But
I'm not
there
sure.
are regulations, and I don't know them off the top of my head, where you can put that reflective strip on the sign. You see them sometimes on stop signs or
Yes.
crossing guard signs. I don't know if it's appropriate for a curve advisory speed.
Right, it would depend on where that sign is.
You're talking about these?
Chevron?
You're looking for the chevron. You're looking for the W18 sign is what you're, or the W16. There's requirements for those signs to be placed.
But there are also those
The
long.
reflectors on the poles. Yep.
Tape that goes on the post.
Yeah. It's a reflective tape. It's a reflective post.
I have one question that I didn't ask, while I had my
Yep.
concern. Are speed bumps allowed in
We're going to get to that. We'll get to that. So we're going to cover we're going to, different things to cover on this. So we're going to cover the placement of this sign first. So from the town, from the members on this board, any other further conversation on the replacement of W1-1? No. None being heard. All in favor? Aye. So that's carried 8-0. So that does not require town board action. That's a placement by the highway department. So that will be forwarded from the traffic safety board to the town highway department for the placement of those signs. That's just a requirement. Going to the next item that was brought up, which was the speed humps and the speed limits. I'm not sure because Chris is not here as to what was reviewed. I'm assuming based on the ball bank study that there was some speed data that was available on the street, along with the posted speed limits that are there. The town of Amherst is actually currently in process. I'm not sure if they've been installed yet on Westwood, if the highway department's finished that project. So it was on our agenda for the June meeting for, it's Westfield, right?
Westfield.
Westfield. So this board with the town highway department just approved the placement of speed humps on Westfield in Amherst, which will be the first street to have speed humps. That's part of a test to see how those speed humps work. With that being said, if that is successful, that it actually works and is available, then there would be parameters that would be set in order for those to be placed on your street. With that request being asked, we would have to do the full study on the street to figure out what the actual speeds are. Unfortunately, we do know from a lot of times residents do state that cars are driving fast on their street. We then put the sensors that are up on the street. They're not the ones that you think they are. The ones that the town actually uses mount to a tree or a post, so they're not the ones that are on the street, because when people see those, they speed up and manipulate them and everything else. So these are kind of hidden behind a tree, and it's actually a infrared sensor, though people don't know that it's there. So those would be placed to determine the speeds on the street, to determine if any of that was necessary. If there is a speeding concern, that wasn't the item that was brought before us this evening. It was more for the curve advisory signs. If you do have concerns about the speed that were there, we can continue to hold this item and refer to the town highway department to place those speed counters on the street at some point when they are available to determine what the actual speeds are on the street to see if it is that bad. Since you are on a curve, the other thing that we do find with those is that cars always seem to be going faster around a curve than on the straightaway of the street. It's just an optical illusion. We get a lot of times where people that live on the curve are complaining about people speeding on the street. We put that up there and the cars are not going that fast. They're actually going slower through that area. So if you want to do that, that's something that we can hold this agenda item. We can refer that to highway to place the speed counters on the street and then bring this agenda item back before us for that item to make further determinations if anything can be done. With that, one of the things that will be done, should we determine that there are speed problems, is the recommendation to park more cars in the street, because cars then have to navigate parked cars. So putting a parking restriction on a street oftentimes makes cars go faster because now they don't have to navigate parked cars. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there as you start taking these things into consideration. There was a comment that was also made about a four-way stop sign. I believe it was Edgewater is the other court that's there. I am not aware, I don't know if anybody else on this board, of that intersection coming before this board for the placement of a four-way stop sign. I will tell you that it is probably highly unlikely that it would meet the warrants for a all-way stop sign to be placed in that intersection.
It is possible, though, that they have the minor and major wrong.
It is, right. So it is possible that the minor and major are posted wrong because Kmart is the street that is stop controlled. So if we were to go out there and do the warrant analysis to make that an all-way stop sign, what may come back is that the street is actually wrong and the major leg is Kmart and the minor leg is Edgewater, which in turn would potentially have us make a recommendation to flip the stop sign, which now you're giving people a longer stretch on Kmart without a stop sign. At the time I say that, the problem that you have with that is that stop signs are not speed control devices. They are devices to control the traffic flow at the intersection. And when you have the intersections flagged the wrong way with the stop signs, it prevents the issue that you're seeing. It creates the issue that you're seeing right now of people running the stop sign, because the people that are driving the major leg of the road, they're the residents of those streets. They're the people that are driving through there all the time, and probably 90% of the time that they drive that street, there is no car there, so they just drive right through it. Okay, so just be aware that if we do any work or make any recommendations for that intersection, it could create different problems or issues.
I got a couple things. One, Mr. Duggan, I believe, brought up lowering the speed limit. We have it as low as, oh, did I jump you?
You jumped me, go ahead.
Sorry.
Feel free.
Speed limit is as,
Going back to the speed bumps real quick. You mentioned that you guys are just putting down the first time, but is Williamsville not constituted as Amherst?
Williamsville has its own town government. Williamsville has its own traffic safety board. Williamsville operates separate from the town.
so the one thing I was going to say real fast, just because you brought that up, that was going to be my second point, is it is a good thing to discuss with your neighborhood before you make the decision to do speed bumps, because we are still working on it. But one thing that residents don't frequently realize is we are not the city, so the speeds are a little bit faster, and people don't tend to realize how loud speed bumps are because cars make that. So if you have a quiet neighborhood, it may not remain quiet. That is an actual sound pollution problem.
There have also been issues with structural damage to the houses that are like adjacent to the speed bumps. So it's not just, there's a whole bunch of things that go into the whole speed bump problem.
Right. There's been numerous complaints from things that we've looked at on this board of speed bumps being placed, residents asking for them, and then after they are placed, asking for them to be removed because while they're sitting in their house, they hear a constant. Right. They hear a. It's right. You just need to take into consideration that it's one of the things from where they've been placed is the complaint after they're placed is the people whose houses they are in front of. They hear a constant thump 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 in their house as it goes through. So that is part of
Careful what you ask for.
Exactly, because I mean they've been placed in the city. I mean, if you're driving the university district, for example, they're there, and it's not all wine and roses. I mean, it seemed like a good idea last year when they put them in, and you got to consider too the emergency vehicles, because now they can't go fast where they've got to get to. They've got to go ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. And those seconds mean something to that person who's having the heart attack or that house that's burning. So there's a lot more to consider in this whole speed bump issue, which is why we're doing the test case on Westfield to see how it works.
There's a minor leg and a major leg of the intersection, and I always get the numbers wrong. So what you do is you would do a count on the two streets that are going through the intersection. The major one would be this one that has more traffic. The minor would be the one with less traffic. So every intersection has a minor leg and a major leg. Major is where the dominant traffic is. Minor is where there's less traffic. Once you Kmart is the major. There's no doubt in anybody's mind here that Kmart is the major.
Yeah, and the stop sign would not be placed on the major, it would be placed on the minor, so, yeah.
In order to warrant Jennifer, do you know the actual numbers?
It's 300. It's at 300, 200, but I don't remember what it is to have a four-way.
I think it's
Is it 3,
3,
4?
That is the four-way.
Is it 3, yeah, 300, 400. Or 200.
We've lost all point of order in this meeting this night, so.
Then in the last couple of years, maybe it's even 4 or 5 years now, track. Elwood and Edgewater made a four-way. And I just wonder what the criteria was to make that be a four-way. I don't know if we get another four-way that close together. But that would be.
Made that a four-way.
I'm just curious.
We could study
We
it.
can
take any
recommend that it
action
be
on
studied and not take any action and establish what it is.
Yeah.
The traffic counts that you would need, I believe, are 300 cars per hour on the major leg and 200 cars per hour on the minor leg over an 8-hour period. So you take the average, you look at an 8-hour, the busiest 8-hour period of the intersection, and then you would need that 300, 200 count on those legs of road. It's going to be hard to hit it on a residential street. Sorry? Accident history.
Don't go fast in Edgewater, because you've got that 90-degree hairpin to the left, and you've got that bend to the right, so you don't have anywhere to pick the speed. Come and stop on Kmart, it's mostly college kids in the duplexes. Just kind of slow down and glance and just go.
Right. The only, what I could say, there is the possibility. I don't remember Edgewood and Delwood placing it as an all-way stop sign. We have done stuff on this board where we do the traffic study at the intersection and determine that it is flagged wrong. So we recommend the placement of the correct signs. However, the residents then are in opposition for removal of the signs that are misplaced, which then makes it a four-way stop sign. Right. So what I'm saying here is that we've made the recommendation as the town resolution that goes before, which could be how that became a four-way stop sign, is we recommended the resolution to place the stop sign the way it should be placed, and then there's a resolution for the removal of the stop signs that are placed wrong. The town board then takes the action to approve the placement of the stop sign, but then denies the motion to remove the stop signs out of resident opposition, which then creates a four-way stop sign. So there is that possibility that could end up happening here if we study the intersection. Just
Once the stop sign's in, people don't like to take them out. Let's put it that way.
It is very hard to remove a parking restriction. It's very hard to remove a stop sign. It's easy to place stuff, very difficult to remove stuff. Yours and many other in the town. Okay, so with that, that's the speed limit issue. There is also stuff before the town where the town speed limit in the town is posted as 30 miles per hour. There is stuff that was just passed through New York State that would allow the town to change speed limits posted in the town down to 25 miles per hour. Those can be placed on individual streets or it could become a town-wide motion. Issue with that is that it's a speed limit sign at the end of the day, and people are still going to drive the speed that they want to drive and with the comfort that they're driving. And if we're going to change all those signs, reduce those speed limit signs, unless we're going to hire another 100 police officers in this town to enforce all of those signs, it's really just placing a new sign that's not going to be adhered to. So going to the item that was before us and the placement of the no parking signs on the actual intersection itself. As I stated before, this is an item before us, item number 4 on our agenda for Briar Hollow for a new subdivision where we will be taking the action to place the signs now on the parking restriction as the neighborhood's being built out. When your neighborhood was built out, it didn't happen. So it just gets addressed as people bring it before us. We do luckily have the resident here this evening from house number 59. Just want to point out that if this board is to take any action, it would pretty much restrict parking along your entire property line.
So
So you would be the main, when it goes before the town board, you would be the main person that they would listen to. If you are in favor of it, they would probably move with you. If you were opposed to it, they're going to move with you. It normally goes, the parking restriction normally goes from the edge of the curve, what, is it 50 feet from the edge of the curve? No. On the inside edge, I think we've done
There was one car.
one car length, yes. One car length, it's the edge of the street that I'm thinking on a corner. So it's about 20 feet from the edge of the curve in both directions. So if we look at that, if you go up the street there a little bit, you're probably looking at somewhere right around that tree, right around where your fence is. Somewhere in that vicinity right there is where it would be posted. That's where it would start. And then on the other end of the curve, where we would go there, it would probably, I would recommend, it would probably go to, it would,
Actually, no, that's not bad. I was looking at the wrong spot.
the issue is there, just looking at the measurement there,
Slow down for
Or just
children's sign.
is there enough space for a car to park in that spot? Okay. Yeah, so that is, so that corner there, that's going to be something for engineering to decide and highway to decide as to where that would be placed. If it would be placed on, if somewhere in that vicinity, it's going to be, they're going to look at a map, actually take a measurement as to where the edge of the curve is and then go one car length. Yes. Yep, so it's one car length from the edge of the curve.
Well, what you got is you got the,
Well, it's going to be a big pole in the ground, yeah. But what's going to happen, but looking at this curve, it's, if there's enough space where the little guy is standing, my recommendation would be to put it on the other edge where the garbage can is.
yeah, because you have the clear line of sight through the driveway.
You have the driveway, which becomes your car length.
Yeah, that becomes your car length.
Say that again?
Yeah, that's what we just said. That's what we just said.
That will come from, that's not our, we would make the recommendation of the parking restriction for the curve. Once that's made, the town engineering department would go out there and take measurements to determine exactly where the signs would be placed as part of the resolution. We can make the recommendation from the edge of your driveway around the curve. Right, but what I'm saying here is that there's, from that MUT, from the guidelines that are there is, from the guidelines that are there are items that are placed as to where those signs would be placed for the parking restriction, right? So we don't really decide where they go. It's going to be a parking restriction through the curve. They will determine where the curve is and then do the one car length in either direction of the curve, right? So that's kind of not really up to us to decide, but we can make the recommendation for the edge of your driveway. They may follow it, they may not.
So you'll make the recommendation, it goes before the town board. Will she see what the engineering department decides, or will she only hear that?
That will then, as the motion is made, that'll be drawn up. That's the same as the other parking restriction that we took here. That resolution would be set before the town board to review it, and they would set a public hearing. Once the town makes that resolution and sets the public hearing for it, that would be public information as to where that parking restriction would be. Either Chris or myself would be at that town board meeting when it occurs to present what this board is recommending and the diagrams and drawings for it. Yeah, yeah, you'd be aware of it. And that note, there would also be, as part of that public hearing, as we stated, there would be a notice that would go to all the residents that are in that area affected by it, the neighboring properties as well. And that would be public knowledge to them as to what is being proposed. You sure can. Why not?
I will mention that to Google Maps. And by the way, I've received other requests for Google Maps, and I'll mention that to them too. But as a point too, if it does come up before the town board, 99% of the time there's also a map which shows everything. Because remember, the other town board members aren't here.
Okay, so with that, that would establish the inside curve, and I would ask this board thoughts on restriction on the outside curve.
No. Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea.
I think it's the same issue.
I'd rather implement this, see what happens, see what works. It's more conservative.
You're saying just the inside curve?
Just the inside curve.
I'm looking at it at the outside curve and the placement of those driveways. There's really not much room to park there anyway.
Right.
Through the curve. You might get one car in there, or two.
Which would serve to actually reduce the speed going around the curve.
Correct.
Plus, it's not a visibility issue.
Correct.
I mean, there's no visibility issue caused by an outside car.
Right.
Jake's comment, if cars are being used, then cars are visible there, and then it's taking people to slow down.
Correct. Yeah, so that's why we're recommending just the inside curve for visibility. The outside car there would help cars parked down the outside curve, help with speed control, going through the curve because you have to navigate that parked car. And there's not much parking space there anyway, and there really isn't any sight issues with a parked car there because you would see it from both directions. So with that, I will ask if there is a motion for parking restriction on the inside curve.
I'll do it, I'll make it.
So there's a motion
With the recommendation that goes to the edge of
from
her
Kevin?
driveway.
Sure. I'll second.
and a second from Max. So the motion before us is a parking restriction on the inside curve, 1 car length from the edge of the curves, with the recommendation at the edge of the homeowner's driveway at 59 on the curve side.
Works for me.
Any further discussion? None being heard, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried 8-0. So with that, we have approved a motion 8-0 for the placement of the signs. We've passed a motion for a parking restriction on the inside curve. And the only other question that I have for the residents and for this board is, do we want to refer to Town Highway for a full speed study of the stretch of road for speed and also for the intersection of Edgewater and Kmart?
Yes to both.
So what we would do is we would probably request, since we're going to do the intersection of Edgewater and Kmart for traffic counts there to establish what the counts are, that's going to mean a counter is going to have to be put on Edgewater, probably on both sides. So we'd probably end up catching the speed on Kmart between the curve and Edgewater. I don't know if we'd want to do another speed on Kmart between Sweetwood and the curve as well. I don't know if we need both.
Speed is.
Sorry, what's that? So what's going to end up happening is we're going to refer to Highway to do traffic counts at the intersection of Edgewater and Kmart to determine if it's warranted for a 4-way all-way stop. With that, they're going to place a counter somewhere on Kmart between the curve and Edgewater to establish how many cars are traveling in that road in that direction, approaching that stop sign. With that, that will pick up the speeds through that stretch of the road. So the question is, which we'll refer to Chris as he works on Highway to do that, if they want to place another speed counter on Kmart between Sweetwood and the curve to catch the speeds on that stretch of the road.
Sure.
Right, because you're going to have the curve there.
Will it open up a can of worms that could prevent?
Anything that comes before this board opens up a can of worms.
So, but if they do elect to move the stop sign to Edgewood as opposed to Kmart, there's a little bit of a, yeah, we can notify it, that might be our best option, having it be created.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, that's cool, I think.
Okay, so we're going to hold the item. So we are holding item number 5 pending speed counts on Kmart Drive for speed counts for Edgewater and
And,
traffic control at Edgewater and Kmart.
and intersection traffic counts.
And intersection traffic counts. We just have to be clear on our notes to Chris since he's not here. The motions that we've taken will move forward. We're holding the agenda item on the agenda, which will put it, this agenda item will be on the agenda for our September meeting. Since we're at the beginning of August here, not sure what's in queue with the highway department already for placement of signs and other stuff that's already in queue. So it may be held for September. I would recommend before you come to the September meeting, contact Chris at the engineering department to see if it's going to be on the agenda, or look at the town website. The agenda for this meeting is posted prior to, it will still be posted there either way. So I'd recommend that you reach out to Chris and the Traffic Safety Board to see if we have the counts from highway. If we don't have them for the September meeting, then we're just going to hold it for the October meeting until we have them. So I don't want you to come to the September meeting and find out that we're pushing to October.
First Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, so usually they're conducted mid-block, so it would be probably somewhere up here on Kmart, and down here on the approach to the intersection, and then somewhere mid-block and mid-block on Edgewater.
right, so why we're asking the other question on the other speed count is because that one leg is coming through a curve. You're not going to get an accurate speed reading on that count. Your longer stretch is coming in and out of the curve on the other end. Yep. Okay, so with that, that closes item number 5 for today, to hold it for the next meeting. With that, our next agenda item that we have someone signed in for is item number 2, which is French Landing's speeding concerns. If you want to listen to more speeding concerns, you're welcome to stay. Yep, you're welcome. So with that, item number 2 is French Landing speeding concerns. I'm assuming our last group of residents here are for this item. Let Chris pull, so used to saying Chris, let Tom pull up the information here. And just so you guys are aware, this whole stack is regarding your area. You've got a lot of history here. I think the notes in here go back to
2010.
2009.
Yeah, so this is concerns over cut-through traffic through Landings Drive. You can pretty clearly see here that, at peak hours, vehicles traveling westbound on North French have a pretty easy time taking Landings up to eventually go northbound on Campbell and kind of circumvent this Campbell and North French intersection. I did talk to Chris about this one. I do want to give an update. This is in the pre-design phase by New York State DOT. They're possibly shooting for a 2024 bid cycle, which would be construction sometime after that. And that would be for the reconfiguration of the Campbell North French intersection, traveling westbound on North French. So towards Campbell if you're coming from this section of North French. I just wanted to make sure I can have this.
Yep, so we go through the order that people are signed in on the agenda. Yep, I'm sorry, the order that people are signed in, and then the agenda.
So this is the one, let's see here, there's two different concepts. One of these would take, this is further back. So this would be approaching Landings westbound, giving a straight through and then a center turn median for both left and right turn movements.
So Tom, on that one, I just want to point out that North French is actually a county road. It's not a state road. This concept was actually presented to the county when they repaved. They milled and repaved North French probably 2 or 3 summers ago. This board requested that Erie County, with the paving project when they repainted it, to repaint it with this configuration, and the county did not do it. So as Tom goes through this here, this is information that we're providing to New York State DOT with that intersection to take under consideration, but because North French is a county road, we don't know where that will go.
Yep, so I'll just go back to this one. which is then the approach to Campbell with that center turn median tapering off into the left turn lane in a straight through westbound. So there are some speed and volumes that we collected. These are from June 29th of this year. As you can see, the majority of the speed is in the 26 to 30 mile an hour range. So that puts the 85th percentile at 30 miles an hour. So 85% of the drivers are actually going the speed limit on landings. And let's see. So this is southbound on landings. So we get the same results, 26 to 30 miles an hour. That 85 percentile speed is 33. So there isn't necessarily as much of a speeding concern as there is for the traffic. This is the total traffic counts for landings. It looks like it's just over 1,000 vehicles a day. It looks like there's a peak at noon to 1, and then a little bit more of a peak in the 3 to 4 to 5 hour. And then as we get to speeds over 40 miles an hour, you get the morning commute, 7 to 9. It looks about just under 1.4 cars on average over 40 miles an hour.
So what I will say is, with the information that's been provided to us, the speed on your street is really not bad. No, that's not what you think, but based on the way the street is posted as a 35-mile speed limit, which is what the town posted as a 30 mile per hour speed limit, right? With the speeds in the 30 to the 85th percentile speed is 30 miles per hour and 33 miles per hour. That's from what we see on this board of people coming with speed concerns. That is actually well within the limits of what would be considered acceptable. There are much worse streets that come before us regarding speed. So just want to point that out to you, that those speed counts are actually within a good range. The other thing, Tom, that I don't think you covered is part of that New York State pre-design phase. The other part, I don't know if we've recommended, but is part that New York State, from what I've heard from conversations with Chris, that they're looking into, part of that design work is for the installation of a right turning lane from North French to Campbell. That is the problem area that causes the cut through in your neighborhood, is those cars are looking to make that right-hand turn, and that's what's backing up that intersection. Is the cars going straight prevent the cars, which is one of the dominant movements in that intersection, making the right-hand turn. So the installation of that right-hand turning lane would, in everyone's opinion, reduce the cut-through traffic in your neighborhood, because those cars would be able to make that turn without having to wait at the light, and thus would no longer have a reason to cut through your neighborhood. So with that, we'll open up the public comment period, public comment discussion, and our first person signed in for this item is John Scott.
Hi, everyone. John Scott, 18 Belmore Court. I have some comments to what you said, but I want to use my 3 minutes for it, so I'll pause, or I'll wait for that for later. But I guess what I'll say is, my wife and I have lived in the neighborhood for 12 years. We were looking at Clarence. We actually saw a house that we liked out there, and we did not go with it. My mom sort of talked me into like Landings area with sidewalks and Amherst being a safe neighborhood. I will tell you, hands down, my brother who lives in Clarence, 25 mile per hour speed limit, no sidewalks is safer than Landings. I'll argue the traffic study. We have a traffic study from before. It shows different results. It was one day. I don't know what happened. It was in late June. I don't know if it was anyway, I'll get into it later, but I would question it. But I also say this. I don't think you can compare Landings to an average street. Tim, if you wanted to scroll up, we have many houses back in the development. It explains also not just the cut through, just keep going up. It's a huge development, right? So Penny Lane and back there, North Rockingham, there's a lot of cars. if you just zoom in, and once you get to Belmore there, it's just where right there. That turn right there, 30 miles is way too fast. There's a warning sign for 25 miles per hour. Very few people go 25. If I go 30 right where you are there, if any of you actually go over there, very few cars stay on the right side of where they should be. They cut over to the left, and that car right there, I'm glad you can see it. We live to the right here. My wife and I will be walking the dog. It's hard to cross the street there because cars zip by. 30's too fast. They might be going 35, and they're on the left side of that street, and it's hard to see them coming. Our kids ride bikes here. If there's cars parked on the street, it's terrifying for them. Right there, that mailbox, that white mailbox there, it has been hit at least 3 times. I can actually show you a picture at the end of this with a car going too fast that went right up on it. The tree, one of the trees was hit. The tree didn't get taken down. I can't believe it. But this is what we're dealing with this street. Cars go too fast. You get people texting. In 30, if there is one street, I feel in Amherst that needs to be reduced in terms of speed limit, it is this. It is not a safe street, 30 miles or not. I believe it should be reduced to 20-ish miles per hour, and there should also be some other measures. Supervisor Kolpa has actually been out to our street. He supports mitigation for this. The cut through that you're talking about, I think that would help. The turning lane around North French and Landings, I don't think that's going to help a whole lot. I think the turning lane at Campbell could help reduce some cut through. It definitely happens, but cars are still going to cut through. It's a problem. I don't know what percent of the cars coming through Landings are actually not in our neighborhood, but even the ones in our neighborhood, they tend to go fast. You get teenage kids, you get some people in the back, they just fly through, and just something has to be done. The last thing I'll say, my daughter, she waits out for the bus stop, and it's right where you were, Tim, around that turn, and we have her back up off the sidewalk because cars do come flying down, and especially in the winter there, it's dangerous. They hit an ice patch or something. It's just a curvy road, and if you can keep going up there, you can see it's not just one curve. It continues to curve, and we just ask that you do something. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is it Nicole Scott? You're good? Item number two. Kevin Costanzo?
First, I want to thank you guys all for taking the time. I think you kind of did my work for me. You said that you have a booklet on this going back to 2009, I believe you said. So this is 14 years. And like my neighbor John said, I live at 9 Belmore Court on the corner. I have the study results, and with all due respect, you can't tell me that one study result equates to 14 years worth of complaints. I've personally spoken to the Amherst police multiple times, and the same answer that I continue to get is, we have had nonstop calls in your neighborhood for the last 10 plus years. So these studies that you're referring to, I crunched some numbers, because right on the corner of my house, there is a sign that suggests 25 miles per hour. So if we want to talk about numbers, I will gladly crunch numbers with you. From the back of the neighborhood going past my house, 72% of cars go above the posted and recommended 25 miles per hour speed limit. 34% of those cars are going 30 plus, so they're going over the speed limit. I have a 2-year-old son and another baby on the way. I am fearful of my child being outside by himself. So again, regardless of what those numbers say, that's one day. 2 houses down from me, they were repairing that roof. 4 houses down from them, there was a moving company. And I understand where the black box is because I'm the one who has spoken to Chris multiple times about this. I have watched cars pulling in from off of North French onto my street. I've watched cars hit the brake lights. I'm walking with my son all the time. When I'm pulling in, I've asked my mother, who's always in the neighborhood walking, and it's the same thing. So I understand how you mentioned before about there's lasers that are seen. I've watched cars stop when they see the black box posted. There was a car in the back of the neighborhood that went through a house. They hit a house in South Rockingham. It's the same issue as speeding throughout the neighborhood. What else do I have here? If I would encourage any one of you to go through this neighborhood at 7 o'clock in the morning and maintain and take a look at how many kids are waiting for a bus. And I actually just want to ask you guys, we've complained about this neighborhood and the street for apparently going back 14 years. Are we being unreasonable? If it was your children or your grandchildren, is it unreasonable to ask that you look at putting stop signs in this neighborhood? I'm sure you get this every Wednesday or once a month, people saying, you know, people are speeding, whatever. You have a booklet of 14 years of information telling you this has been an issue for 14 years. Are we being unreasonable for wanting our kids and the grandkids in the neighborhood to want to be safe? It's in your hands. And I'm sorry if this offends anyone here. The back of the neighborhood are newer, larger houses. On a daily basis, you get dozens of Beamers, Jaguars, Teslas, beautiful cars who fly through our neighborhood with absolutely no regard. And I'm sorry, and I hope to God that I'm wrong. It is going to take an accident and someone getting hit for this to change, because enough is enough. On here posted, there was one car that went 65 miles per hour. I was out that night. I was taking out my garbage, and the car whizzed by me. So that night where it shows 65 plus, I saw it. This morning, I'm outside with my son. A car, and I'm not saying this, I'm in front of you, at a minimum was going 50 miles per hour. If it was your child or your grandchild, would you feel safe letting them out of the driveway running around? I put out those little slow signs. On the second night, someone stole the flag. Right? So what are we supposed to do? You have 14 years of complaints in front of your hands. I'm sorry, and like they said, we can talk about this. You have to put stop signs in the neighborhood. With that stretch of road, and you can see how many houses come from North French all the way in the back, people do not slow down. So I'm asking you, this has been in your hands for years. I'm asking you to be proactive and not, God forbid, reactive for something to happen, because I'm telling you, this is video recorded. I hope I'm wrong. Someone is going to get hurt in this neighborhood. We spoke to neighbors before we left, and I'm sure I'm over the 3 minutes, and that's fine. We've spoken to neighbors who have attempted this in the past. Something has to be done. If we need to pay for the stop signs, I'm sure we have enough people who will pay for it. So that's what I'm asking, is for you to please review this and take this into serious consideration, because there are hundreds of kids in this neighborhood and something awful is going to happen. Our neighbors are told F you by other drivers when we are told to ask them to slow down, and we're given the finger. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. We can put it on the screen here. Yep. Nora, your chart checked as no. Are you still no?
What are we looking at here?
That was the car I mentioned. One of that mailbox been hit 3 times. That actually went up on this beautiful stone mailbox around that bend I was just mentioning, going too fast. So I'm not making this up.
Mailbox you pointed out before?
That was, yes, the white one. So that was a beautiful stone one. That was the second time that one got hit. That one destroyed it. And then they put up a temporary one. Actually, it has been hit 4 times. Then they put up a temporary one. That one got hit, and then white one went up. So right around that bend, and God forbid someone gets hit there. I mean, it's a sidewalk right there. It could save someone, the trees or mailbox, but people go too fast around that bend.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Nora Costanzo. I just wanted to say, to reiterate what my husband was saying, I live at 9 Belmore Court, but the day you guys put up that post, I saw the black box. There was a roofing company right there and a moving company, so of course everyone was slowing down. So I don't think it's accurate. I think you guys need to do another study.
Okay, we can refer that over. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
I just want to use my 3 minutes. The only thing I was going to say is a previous study, Tim, I'm sure you have, it does not coincide with your speed limit study. The majority of the folks here are going 31 to 35. The percent going 36 to 40 is much higher. If you want to see 10, the prior one.
Okay.
And it also wasn't one day. Nora's point, one day, I mean, I don't know who decided to do one day.
It's not one, just so you know, it's not one day. Those counters are normally out for they're normally out for multiple days, and then they take the highest day of traffic on the street is the day that they use in the results that are posted to us.
This is a 3-day average. It was different than that. Are you more accurate? But if you want to look at it.
Well, we have it as well. We have it as well in our packet. It's from prior studies that were done on the street, which are showing a 34 mile per hour 85th percentile and a 37 mile per hour percentile. No, we have the information here.
Well, I just want to make a point about percent and everything, is even if you had 10% of cars going fast, it's still on this busy street, 60 cars going fast for a day. So I just think percentile wise and whatnot, you gotta be careful with how much stretch with cars.
So with that, is there no one else is in the audience here to speak on this item? With that, we'll close the public comment section and open it up to the board for discussion.
Okay, it
I'm
seems
going
like,
to let everybody else speak before I get to speak and
It's
do
the
what I
same-
get to do as the chairman of the board and be the bearer of bad news.
it
So,
seems like there's two kinds of traffic. There's the cut-through traffic, and then there's the local traffic. I mean, I heard people mentioning the Teslas and the BMWs and the speed wagons going. Now, those are the people in your neighborhood. I mean, is there a way that you can say, stop it?
They gave him the finger.
Some people don't realize how fast they're going to. The fact that some, in their mind, they're not going 40 or 38 or like that. Altercations happen soon.
And then there's also the issue of the cut-through traffic, which you heard them talking about, the state working to minimize the traffic going through. Because I noticed on our count that there's twice as much traffic going, what is it, going south? Yeah, so that's from Campbell going down to French rather than the other way around, which was not what we were thinking. So I'm just wondering, where do the cars that come down, don't they go back? But anyway, I'm not worried about that so much.
One thing that I do want to just quickly say, this is just to one very specific point. I'm in favor of, I get it. Yep, totally understand. One quick thing, you had mentioned, the first gentleman that spoke, mentioned about wanting to bring the speed limit down to 20 miles an hour. We can't by law do that. So the Governor Hochul last year passed a law allowing us to finally lower it to 25. Now, we had mentioned it in the earlier discussion. What we're trying to determine right now is this is not an action from this board, but what we're trying to determine if the best course of action for the town going forward is just outright say the entire town is now 25, or do it piecewise. So that's what the holdup is on the 25 thing, but our hands are tied on lower than that. Like it's a state order for 25 is the minimum. So that's all.
also, another comment on that is when there is a sign posted that is a yellow sign with an advisory speed, that is an advisory speed, that is not an enforceable speed. So the white sign that's on the street indicating 30 miles per hour, that's the enforceable speed by the police department. The yellow signs are advisory. So if a car is going through that intersection at 35 miles per hour, they're not speeding by 10 miles per hour, they're speeding by 5. If Captain Brown was here in the police department, he will tell you that the police department is looking for speeds to write tickets that are normally about 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, because tickets that are lower than that are normally discharged.
So to that point then, if there's an advisory speed of 25 for tickets in law, there's an advisory speed of 25, cars should be going 25.
So the advisory is a statement to the safety of the driver for what, from their point of view, is a safe speed to go, so they don't get into a car accident. That being said, is not legally enforceable.
Yeah, totally get it. My point is, it's Kevin's number. We talk about other than 3 miles over the speed limit. They're actually going much higher than the advised.
Than the advised, yes, but
okay. So
we don't.
It's about not taking cars about our neighborhood being safe. And someone at some point said 25 is safe, not 30.
Sure, and I totally agree with you. It's just the question on our end, from a board point of view, at least with the speed limit, is what action can we take for that? But just we do it specifically item-wise. And yes, while it would be more prudent for the drivers to drive slower, from our point of view, the most we can do is put up signs like that, right? Unless we start taking different, structural aspects. I digress.
So with that, if you also reduce the speed limit to 25 miles per hour on one street, or if you reduce the speed limit in the entire town to 25 miles per hour, people are going to drive the speed that they are comfortable driving. So it doesn't mean that people are actually going to start driving 25 miles per hour when you reduce the speed limit from 30 to 25, unless you have the enforcement in the town to go along with that, which means we need additional officers on the street that can actually write tickets for those cars that are going over the posted speed limits on the street. If Captain Brown was here this evening, he would let you know that the problem that the town has is that during the peak hours of the day when majority of the cars are speeding, the Amherst Police Department is dispatched to other calls in the town, being accidents on the 290, accidents on Sheridan Drive, wherever they need to be to respond to that during those peak hours, there aren't really officers available on the street to be shooting radar to slow traffic. Then you put the officers on the street in the non-peak hours, and if you look on there, that's not when people are speeding. All right, so it's kind of that catch of the police have to go where they're called to, and speed enforcement becomes secondary when they have the time to do it based on the resources that are available to them. I will tell you at the same time that I was happy to see a post from the Amherst Police Department. I think they had 17 new hires for the academy related to, I'm assuming some of it may be new hires, extra officers, some of them based on retirement, so maybe there is some additional enforcement coming to the town in that regard.
If there's been 14 years of complaints, you yourself believe that for 14 years, cars are only going on average over 3 miles per hour of the speed limit. People have just been, our eyes are all seen for 14 years.
I'm not going to dispute the 14 years of complaints that have come before this board, but what I will tell you is the actions that are available to this board to address your problem don't exist, which is why it's gone on for 14 years. If you would let me speak, I would be more than happy to explain it to you. Or if you want to keep talking over me, we can keep on going on like this. So with that, the actions that we have before us is we have the MUTCD that tells us what we can and cannot do. So, looking at that, the length of the streets that are touching landings are cul-de-sacs with about 10, maybe 15 houses on them. Are you going to get 200 cars on the minor leg of that intersection to warrant placing an all-way stop sign at those streets? No. So we don't have the ability to place stop signs at those intersections unless there's something happening at those streets that warrants us to do that, which is going to be an accident history. We don't have an accident history at the intersections. Putting up stop signs is not something that this board is capable to do at those intersections based on the design of the intersection. The other thing that you have stated yourself is the number of people that are speeding through the street, driving their BMWs, their high expensive cars that live at the other end of the neighborhood on the back end. That tells us right there that it's not cut through traffic. It's people that live in the neighborhood that are familiar with driving the streets where they live, and they just don't care at the end of the day. They're going to continue to do that no matter what we do. They will continue to speed. They will continue to do what they want to do. If we put stop signs up that are not warranted at those intersections, then you create a false sense of security that cars are going to stop at stop signs, which creates another problem. We can show signs. We have videos all over this town, and we get complaints all the time about people coming and people not stopping for stop signs. We probably get as many complaints about that as we get about cars speeding in the town. So putting up a stop sign at those intersections is not going to do anything, even if we could, because you're just going to change your problem from speeding to people running stop signs. Also, when people have to stop signs that are residents within the neighborhood, they become extremely frustrated when they're driving their high-end car that you're discussing, that they don't care about the neighbors in the street. So what do? They speed faster between the stop signs, and we have speed studies that show that as well, that they'll speed from one stop sign to the next stop sign. When you put in the unwarranted stop signs, speeds on the street actually increase. This board has gone before numerous times. We've created numerous things. We've talked to the town. We've sent recommendations to New York State DOT. We've sent stuff to Erie County. The problem with your neighborhood, at the end of the day, is the intersection of Campbell and North Forest. North French, is that intersection. The New York State DOT is finally doing work and has in the design phase to make improvements at that intersection. When you have an intersection that's failing, it creates problems. The reason why you're seeing a higher count on southbound traffic is because the cars that are headed south on Campbell Road have to wait too long to make a left-hand turn. However, because the major leg is North French and the signal is running for too long on that stretch of the road. So they know that they can cut through your neighborhood. The people that live in your neighborhood know that they are faster to get out of the neighborhood by driving on Landings and going out to North French, making the left-hand turn on North French because they can make the left-hand turn out because all the traffic is stopped on the street, which allows them a break in traffic to make the left-hand turn, or they can drive on Campbell and they can wait through 3 changes of the light. If you're able to change the intersection and create a safe intersection with better traffic flow at it at North Campbell, now the people that are up in that high end of the neighborhood that can't get out of the neighborhood, that can't make a left-hand turn to get onto the 990, they can now exit the street out onto Campbell, and instead of having to zigzag through a bunch of streets to get out to there, they now have the ability to use the intersection the way it's designed to be used for them to use Campbell to make the left-hand turn onto North French. The solution to this is correcting the problem at North French and Campbell, which is out of our jurisdiction because North French is a county road and Campbell is a New York State DOT road. Until that intersection is corrected, the cut-through traffic is going to continue. Once that cut-through traffic is eliminated from your neighborhood, you're still going to have speeding concerns on your streets. Not denying that at all. But the speeding at that point is going to become the residents that live in the neighborhood, and we're going to reduce the traffic counts on the street based on the cut-through traffic being eliminated. At this point, we can talk up here for the next 3 hours of putting speed bumps on Landings all the way through. It's not going to happen. The speed counts that are there exist. It's going to be a resurfacing. It's going to require budgeting from the town in order to do that, from the highway department, from the town board, and they're going to want to see the results of the traffic and what happens when the intersection is redone before we would consider placing speed humps on that street. We will definitely refer that to highway to redo the speed count, but what we're going to see is probably speed counts that are similar to the other study that we already have here that show speed counts in the 32 to 37 mile per hour range around those curves and in that area.
Now, I will say something slightly to the contrary about the speed bumps comment is while it is likely that we'd have difficulty acquiring funding, similar to how we've said 50 times about things that aren't in our purview, finance is also not in our purview. But what I mean by that is we shouldn't be making decisions based off of whether or not we will get funding. I have no problem recommending it to be a possible neighborhood for that. If they don't get funding it, then hey, that is truly outside our, but we can still make the recommendation to put in speed bumps.
Correct. We can still make that recommendation. The other thing that will be required in order to put those speed humps in on the street is you've already stated that there's contention within your neighborhood and the opposition that you get to people flipping you off and everything else. As part of that, there would be a survey that would be done of all of the residents in the neighborhood, and you would need 50 to 70% of the people in the neighborhood supportive of installing the speed humps.
But the other thing I will say on that is that would be something that I would deem as an issue for the town board to have to deal with. We can still make the recommendation.
So that's correct. We can still make the recommendation, but that's where I'm going with it's not going to happen because you would need the town board, in order to install those speed humps, is going to require a public hearing in order to do it of some kind, and they're going to ask the residents that are in favor, and from what you're telling me, there's probably going to be more residents that live on the back courts, on all the other courts, and all the other streets that are in there that are going to speak up in opposition of the speed humps. Correct.
Can I just mention something like that I want to say to you? First of all, nobody on this board wants the situation that you have. I'm very empathetic. I have 5 families that are personal friends that live on Belmont. So I understand. I'm in your neighborhood quite often. So I hear you, and what Eric is saying is there are certain parameters that need to be met for us to make recommendations, and unfortunately they aren't met. So it's not that we personally don't want to see safety measures implemented. If those measures are met, or if those numbers are met, then we can make those recommendations. That's the power that we have. We
don't have the power if we don't have those percentages. Do we agree with what you're saying? 100%, we hear you and we understand. What was interesting to hear about your construction vehicle or the roofing cars on your street. I live on a street where we have a fencing guy, a guy that works for National Fuel, cars on the first house on my street. So I have cars parked from the beginning of the street back to 2 houses beyond me. We don't have a speeding problem because so many cars are parked on our street. So even though you don't want to hear it, and I hate the thought of people hitting my cars, it doesn't happen as often as you think, but when cars are parked in front of your house, it does slow the traffic down naturally. That's what I was saying about the study, is that there was a roofing company there that day. So I'm agreeing with you. That, like, I know, but if you put your cars there, other people park where the roofing company was, that slows down traffic.
What Kristen is trying to say is one of the recommendations, and I was about to make the exact same one, is that if you guys can get an initiative going in your neighborhood to get more families to park on the street, that does also help. I'm not saying that is the action that we will take. I'm just saying that is something that could contribute to helping your speed situation.
So if we redo the study and said the average speed is 37, you guys are still gonna say, well, forget it, 14.
I absolutely agree that we should repeat the study.
Maybe the rules that are in place for what a stop sign consists of.
So to answer your concerns about the stop sign, and I absolutely understand where you're coming from, but it is a frequent common misconception that is the use of stop signs. The use of stop sign is not for speed control, it is a traffic control device. And it's whether you believe it or not, there are countless studies out there actually stating that they can speed up traffic when there are too many stop signs, because people want to make up the time in between stop signs. If you don't believe it, they're certainly online. You can look them up. But regardless, that's why the qualifications to get them to be placed exist in the first place. And I absolutely understand where you're coming from. It's just as an affiliate of the town, our hands are tied on placement of stop signs simply because there are criterion out there to place them. Like, qualifications need to be met for that, and they are a volume of number of cars, if that's what your question is going to be.
Let's get 2 simple questions. I'll be done. I don't want to belabor. I really appreciate you trying to work with people and everything. I really do. Number one, I guess this whole versus 30 miles, the study and all this, does the fact that the road is windy and hard to see at times, does that play into any recommendation?
That actually works in your favor.
Works in your favor.
A curving road works in your favor, because on Landing, we drove it, I drove it. There's that first stretch off of French for maybe a quarter mile where it's straight. I bet you that's a speedway, because then you start getting into the windy stuff like that, and I bet you the cars slow down after that, don't they? Because it's hard to go fast.
I think just know that the person in blue who mentioned before with the other people is an optical illusion. I get it. It might seem like they're going faster, but I think it's also dangerous. Like if they're going 30, like I said, around that curve, it is too fast 30 there, and it just. I get you guys are your hands are tied and whatnot. I guess it leads to my second question. Is if you guys had a magic wand right now and you could do anything to slow traffic down and you could do it, what would it be?
I'd put a center median on landings for that first quarter mile, split the traffic, make them go that way, and deepen the curves that you guys have, because they're kind of shallow curves, so they don't really make you stop. And I'd make the curves more 90 degree, and I'd put a median right down landings. A median, a center median.
Those do significantly reduce speed, and it is a beautiful neighborhood. I agree that would.
The jargon out there is called tactical urbanism for these kind of things.
You asked if anything we could do in our imagination. Be redesigning the neighborhood from when it was built.
That type of thing. I mean, once again, our purview should never be to make decisions based solely off of what is financially a decision of another board, but the realistic expectation that they would repave a huge neighborhood like that to put a median, I mean, is quite low. But that's not for us to make. The finance side of it, the good or bad idea, sure, we are allowed to make those ideas.
And one of the things that we've started to study as a board over the past couple of years is traffic calming in general, because a lot of people come here asking for the stop signs because they think it's a traffic calming measure, but as we've said, it's only a means to control traffic at the intersections. So the speed humps are a traffic calming measure. The median down the center is a traffic calming measure. Winding roads, but trying to retroactively fit those things into a neighborhood that's already been built, it's kind of a little bit of a struggle. So we're trying to come up with guidelines. As we mentioned earlier in the meeting, we're doing a beta test on one roadway in Amherst to do the speed humps. So as these things evolve and we study things, we'll be able to implement those over time. So I'm more on the conservative side. I'd like to see what happens at the intersection of Campbell and North French to see how that impacts your neighborhood. But on the flip side, you've been dealing with this for 14 years. So we do appreciate what you're saying. And if stop signs, if we could do it and it was a traffic calming measure, we would do it. It's not because we don't empathize with you, but we would like to find something to help you guys out.
Mr. Chairman, there's a terminology that you don't hear much anymore. It's demonstration project. And in my mind, that's used when we don't know what the answer is. And I could tell you, if you go out this parking lot and you turn left on Cayuga Road, there's a demonstration project right there, right now. It was just completed. The road was paved. That road is 30 foot wide. It has two 10-foot wide travel lanes and two very wide, bright yellow stripes down the center. And there's a couple of fog lines there. I'm wondering if something like that might work on landings. And I urge you, when you go home tonight, go out the parking lot and take a left. And then talk to the Village of Williamsville leadership and see what they think. And I'd give them a month or two, because it really just was completed in July, okay? And I'm not going to venture any opinions at this point.
But we do appreciate your feedback, your positive feedback. We know this is all volunteer, it's late, we've been sitting here too, we all want to go home. But we're not coming here to say that, like it's just such a minor thing. It's not a minor thing. It's 14 years. So I kind of want to know, what does it take to then supersede your board then? For 14 years, if you're telling me, Mr. Chairman, that there's nothing you can do,
You're the bad
you're kind of sending home, then let's go above you.
So I'll continue to be condescending because I'm going to apologize for that. But as you sit here, and I've been on this board, I believe, for 8 years now.
No, longer.
Longer. So for those 14 years, I've been on this board. I've heard the residents of your neighborhood on almost every single one of these agenda items come in here. And we continue to hear the same thing, that the people in the neighborhood continue to speed through the neighborhood. We have different groups of residents that come in here all the time from your neighborhood that continue to complain about the people speeding in the neighborhood. We continue to make recommendations. This board has gone to New York State DOT with recommendations asking them to fix the intersection at Campbell Road. That's not the answer that the people in the neighborhood want to hear, because they want something done in the street. We've gone to Erie County. We've asked them to address the issues on North French that are causing people to cut through your neighborhood. That's not the answer that the people in your neighborhood want to hear, because it's not things that are being done. We have things that we are trying to do sitting up here on this board, working with New York State DOT and Erie County for the streets that feed into your neighborhood that this board has no jurisdiction over to do. But we're being told by the residents in here this evening and other residents over the 14 years that this board is doing nothing, that we're not trying to help you. We can't put stop signs up where you want them to be. It's not allowed. We can't make those recommendations. We don't have the ability to do that. We are trying to do what we can do to help you, and it's not the answers that you want to hear. I agree with you all completely that there's a problem in your neighborhood. To have someone standing up here telling me, what would you do if they were my kids? How would we feel if it was 14 years? I feel it. I've listened to the people in your neighborhood for the 14 years. Not the 14 years because I think it's closer to 10 that I've been here, so I've missed a couple of the meetings. This neighborhood, this area comes before this board at least once a year, if not twice a year. But yet, you guys are here for this meeting. There's another group of residents that were here for the last meeting. There's another group of residents that were here for the last meeting. There was another group of residents that were here for another meeting. If you want to have an impact, talk to the residents in your neighborhood and get all of them to come here at the same time. Get all of the residents to come here at the same time. Get all of the residents to go to the town board meeting, to show up at a public hearing and speak at that meeting. Get your elected officials to do something else working with New York State, DOT, and Erie County to address the major roads at that section of the town that are creating the problems in your neighborhood. That's what can be done. If you can fix those streets, then you can start working on, is it cut-through traffic in your neighborhood, or is it the people in the street that are speeding? Can we take other actions that can be done? We can't do that, right? So we are working with what is in our toolbox at this particular time to work with.
Let's wrap this up.
So child at play signs are not government place signs. Those are usually placed by residents. They're not, are you talking about the ones on this? Oh yeah, those aren't permitted.
Those are no longer permitted.
Yeah, those have been banned.
If I may, you had spoken earlier about going over our heads. Do it. Contact your county legislature. Contact your state assemblyman. Contact the state senators. That's going above our heads, and that's going to get you the action you need. Because it's
Continue to contact Supervisor Kalpa. You already said that he's been out there, he's looked at it, and he's supportive of it. He's the supervisor. He can override anything on this board. He can do anything on that street that he wants to. He can propose it to anybody. We can't propose it to him. Keep going to him. Keep going to the state. Keep going to the county. Keep going to everybody else.
Yeah, I guess I said I'm done, but I'll get two more things real quick. I guess one is I don't get what 100 residents here would do different than what we're doing. I didn't follow that. Why is that different? Like you've heard them over the years. What's different about getting 100 here in one city?
Take your 100 people and go to the town board meeting.
Take your 100 people and go to the town board meeting.
And personally, my opinion is it's not going to be one thing that fixes this. I'm happy, anxious to see how that changes on North French Health. I think I heard the lights can maybe be a little longer on Campbell. Great. But I mean, to Nora's point, I think it's the sign, maybe some lines, stop sign, I'll believe you guys. I would personally love speed bumps. I don't know, is it small speed bumps or those big ones? Those long ones?
well, we'd have to see.
One other comment that I'll make here, why I say bring 100 people to this meeting if you want to. The first agenda item where you all sat here, we had 2 residents from one street that couldn't agree on a parking restriction on the side of the street. And a woman that didn't want a parking restriction at all that left mad because we recommended a parking restriction, which is what was put in the packet that was recommended coming through. If you want to fix the problem, you got to get the people in your neighborhood to all acknowledge and realize what the problem is and get them together and help come up with the solution. Having everybody come here piecemeal with different problems at different times on different curves on different streets, it's all going to be piecemeal. If you can get everybody to come together at the same time, that's the reason why we have a packet that's this thick, that's gone on for 14 years. There's 4 of you here tonight. There's how many houses in that neighborhood? You got to get your neighbors together. You got to get everybody together in the neighborhood to realize the problem, and you've got to get everybody to reach out to Supervisor Kalpa. You've got to get everybody to reach out to the Erie County Legislature. You've got to get everybody to reach out to New York State. You got to do it together as a group in critical mass. But 4 of you coming here tonight, 4 of you coming to the next meeting of a different group of 4 people, it's not creating the critical mass all at the same time.
So if we have 100 people here tonight saying the same thing, would we have a different outcome?
Council member Zuccalla would hear it.
Well, and Councilman Zuccala's already heard you. I guess I wasn't going to weigh in, but I'll do that if the chair will allow me a moment.
I'm more than happy to let you weigh in.
Of course you would. The first was, I never got to answer your question, which is, suppose I had a magic wand, I could do whatever I wanted. Well, I sit on this board, and I've been sitting on this board as an advisor for 3.5 years. And I keep track of the calls I get from residents like yourself. And the number 1 call I get, because I'm all on this board, is people complaining about traffic, people complaining about stop signs, people complaining about speeding. And I respect that. And my answer continues to be, if I had a magic wand, what I would do is I would say, I'd ask people to show personal responsibility. If we all obeyed traffic control devices, if we all obeyed the speed limit, if we all played by the rules, these problems would go away. The problem is, I can't get people to do that any more than you can. But that's what I want, because that would solve all the problems. As for speed tables, speed bumps, there are many different names, and they actually do represent different items. I also get calls on that too. The problem is I'm also the liaison to all 12 Amherst volunteer fire companies, all of which tell me they despise these things because they slow down response time. I'm also the liaison to the Amherst Police Department, which the chief tells me he despises these things because they slow down response time. I'm also the liaison and a contact person for the ambulance companies, AMR, in Amherst, and actually, as my day job, I am involved in them in Erie County-wide. And they also despise speed bumps, speed tables, and speed humps because it slows down response time and damages the suspension of their vehicles. And I've also received calls from residents of the town of Amherst who despise speed bumps, speed humps, and speed tables because they have expensive sports cars, and this damages the suspension on their vehicles. And that doesn't count the number of times that Pat Lucy, who's the current highway supervisor, has taken me aside, including buying me breakfast, to tell me, Michael, please stop putting these things up, because every time we try and plow after we put them up, it damages plows and it costs money. And then later, Brian and I try and figure out how to not raise your taxes, but take out a speed hump with a 2.5-ton truck, and you realize how much damage that does, either to the speed hump or to the truck itself. I know that you don't want to hear that, and I don't want to live in your neighborhood because I had little kids. I don't anymore, but I had little kids, and I wouldn't want that to happen. And I certainly bothers the hell out of me that there's as an elected official, that there's a problem that you've been coming to us as a neighborhood to solve for more than a decade. That reflects poorly on me and my colleagues. I know that. However, I also recognize, because I've been a member of this board and I understand what the rules and regulations we're expected to abide by, that you're looking for, I hate to say it, a quick solution, but you're looking for a short-term solution or a fast solution. And I don't believe in this case there is one. And I know you don't want to hear that, but it's true. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
It's currently, from what we've been told, it's currently in the design phase with New York State DOT, which would send it out to bid at the end of 2023 or early 2024 for the construction calendar of work in 2024. Summer of 2024 construction season.
You can look on the DOT website and go under projects, and you'll have to do a fair amount of searching, but there'll be a timetable on it if you find it.
Just real quick with the speed humps, I'll just say I just came back from Boston, I'm not concerned with my son. They had speed humps there. My sister was in Bridgeville, South Carolina. I know thousands of residents in your state go down there every year. They have speed humps, big ones in their neighborhood. I'll tell you right now, plows, trying to drive them slow down, I'm sorry, find them if they break the plow. I get the emergency vehicles, but I think it gets strategic to put them in here where most of the time, that they can come in from the street, maybe do water or something, if they want to avoid it. So I get it, I just don't buy it. That's all. Other communities, I'll say right now, better than ours, more forward than we are.
Any other comments on this agenda item?
Thank you, everybody, for your time. I don't appreciate your condescending rude tone. Let everybody talk. You gave the attitude for some reason. Everyone ahead of us interrupted you for 15 minutes. You joked that you lost control of the meeting, and then you're condescending and rude to me. I have a 2-year-old kid who I'm afraid of. I don't appreciate that.
Point taken. You can complain to Councilmember Zucala if you'd like to, and you can ask him to remove me from the board. And then you can volunteer yourself. With that, we are going to close item number 2 and receive and file. Moving on to item number 3, Worley Drive and Len Springs. We're moving to item number 3, Worley Drive at Len Springs, and we have a resident here for this item.
Okay, this is a request for a late night flash signal at the corner of Worley and Len Springs, which intersects Garrison. Let me pull it up on our map here so you get a feel for where it is. Yeah, this one right here. So the late night flash on the signal head would effectively not function as the normal signal head does during the day, or right now 24 hours, and would, after I believe 10 p.m., switch to a flashing yellow in one direction and a flashing red on the other. That would have to be flashing red on Worley and Len Springs, and a flashing yellow through on Garrison and Worley Drive, going northbound, southbound. What we have here is red light runner data. This is the weekday set. These are going to be a little bit difficult to read, but what you have here is the time since the yellow signal phase started, and these detector hits basically are cars that are through the intersection after that yellow phase starts. So you can see all these dots here are through the intersection prior to the red phase starting, and then the dots obviously in the red are cars that have not made it through the intersection by the time that red signal phase hits. So I know that these are going to be difficult to read just because there's so many small data points, but we do have weekday and weekend. You can see here, this one is pretty lit up. Worley Drive and Garrison Road, Len Springs. This is a southbound through, so this is people coming from Main Street down through Garrison, through the Len Springs Worley intersection. And you can see this one, people like to try and jump that one quite often. And this is also on a weekend. This was Saturday, July 5th that these counts were taken.
So that pink or orange, whatever you want to call it,
This top part.
That's people who run on the red light?
Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are we seeing people running red light 8 seconds after turn? Am I reading that
Some
right?
are even more than 10 seconds.
But it's 8
Oh my
seconds.
God.
That would be, but that would be 8 seconds with the start of the yellow phase.
Okay.
So you've got 3 seconds where it's in the yellow phase,
Okay.
and then
Well, the 10 is
the,
truly.
the 10 is from the time it turns yellow.
So the other thing I want to point out too is this dotted line that's behind these data points is the hourly counts. So, you can see here when there's less traffic in the middle of the day, you get a cluster of these people trying to come through. And then here, this 4 o'clock range, you get a lot of data points with people that are kind of taking a risk running these lights. And that's on the weekend. The weekday, you can see all these data points shift towards that PM peak. And you get this huge tall bell curve that comes down. So, like I said, the request is for the late night flash. I do have other, let's see.
Do you know how long the all red phase is when everybody's red? So are these the folks that are exceeding the 10-second mark, potentially there's already a green on the other leg?
Right. I do not know that answer.
Usually it's about 3 seconds.
2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So that next 3-second block there is kind of an
Like
all red phase.
Yeah, up to like 6 or 7.
So the ones that are above that 6 seconds are straight up.
Straight up
There's a
running.
green on the other end.
Yeah.
Coming at them.
I'm assuming that's probably that one like semi-striped arrow at 4 o'clock. I mean, that's got to be like that person just ran it, right? Like super late off phase, because that's probably what pushed the average up. Gosh, probably 30 seconds.
I want to see
over.
if I have. Yes, this is the traffic counts for the intersection, and you can see the blue and green are they keep doing that. The blue and green are the northbound, southbound, Garrison to Worley. Those are the bigger movements, right? More vehicles. And then this left turn from Worley onto Worley is kind of the biggest movement, this left turn to go southbound. So that's kind of the three critical points: northbound to Garrison, southbound to Worley, and then westbound Worley to Worley.
Where is that westbound Worley to Worley? I don't see it.
That's at,
That's this movement here.
Yeah.
that's the orange line.
That is
But where's it on there?
The orange line.
Oh, that one?
this thick one. Yep.
Okay, then where's Worley going north?
This is the slip lane. Yeah.
Narrow, which is actually the widest lane. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
So why don't we let the resident come up and.
With that, Brendan McIntyre.
I'll echo what was said earlier too. It's definitely nice you guys to do this voluntarily and take that abuse. So I've been a resident there for 10 years. Resident for 10 years. There's definitely been plenty of accidents at the intersection. I'm the corner of Foreland Springs there with the line of trees that I planted there. You see those white stones that the cursor is over. That's kind of interesting. One of the cars that was coming from transit towards the airport missed that turn and landed on top of those. It threaded a needle between two posts there that was like slightly wider than the car, and it somehow landed on top of the stones sideways. Yeah, right through there. I blurred it out so you can't see the stones on the street view. Yeah, somehow, like, it's unbelievable. And what prompted this was there's two trees there in the like walkway or whatever you'd call it there. Right there's one, there's the other. Those both got wiped out like a month ago or 2 months ago by a drunk driver, I'm fairly certain, about 11 or 12 p.m. the night of my brother's wedding. So I wasn't even home, but I've got like the Ring doorbell that shows the progression, and it was clearly a late night incident. And then the other one was definitely a drunk driver. I found a bottle in my lawn and stuff. So my concern is that I think a lot of people either are trying to book it and make that turn way too quickly, and so I'd like to see a heavy stop every time and at least slow that turn down. People miss that turn and jump that curb in front of my house where that black car is moving on a regular basis. You'll hear it during the winter. They try and make that turn too quickly and will slide. You talk about weather, slide into the big snowbank that ends up being piled up there. And so, you guys kindly, maybe 5 years ago, worked with, I think, Erie County to get the that whole intersection from the northbound to south towards the airport. Got that on a motion detected trigger, which didn't exist prior. So now that helps that there's not cars idling there as long. But it would just be nice to see everyone have to stop late at night, but not have to stop for an extended period of time while either it's tricking the trigger or whatever to allow them to go. If it's just a stop, they'll stop and move through. The traffic is so light. I'm there all the time. You might get one car kind of approaching at the same time, but it would slow traffic down collectively enough to avoid that rapid turn where people are coming from transit, drinking, probably heading back to home. I've another driver hit in where that little triangle is, somehow ran into the post there, and I came out and saw the woman. She was definitely a heavy drinker, consistent one. So, and then the other thing is when you're coming from transit, approaching that intersection, if you go up a little bit or head east, you'll see where the turn, a little bit more, see where that turn starts there? There are trees along that right side that similarly have been wiped out on the northbound side of, on the right-hand side, but further back. Once it starts to turn, similar to my intersection, those trees along that side are wiped out further back even more. But you can kind of see from here, see how it turns there? If you face the other way. Yeah, see how it starts to turn to the right? They basically come down towards us standing here and miss that turn. You see the little stump there on the left? That's similarly people missing the turn because they're hammer time and jump the curb, wipe the trees out. And so that's what I'm sure is approaching our house. If you have the stones there, like I feel more safe with the trees there and kids and whatnot, but just slowing them down at the stop I think would be prudent. as opposed to sometimes it's a green and they can just plow ahead. Sometimes it's, actually, I think that is the resting light. You guys would know that, but I think the resting light is to give them the green from transit. So it allows people, if there's no one at the intersection, to just plow right through. So, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be my suggestion. Thank you.
So before you depart, your request is for a flashing cycle.
After
in the
9
evening
p.m.
hours.
even, I think like 9 is probably fine.
Those would be
Traffic
my questions.
lightens
What
up.
was the time range that you would look
Think's
for?
reasonable. Yeah, I think 9 is fair. Like you saw the spike there on that traffic for sure. Like it's all rush hour related traffic. So during the week, it's all the business park there. On the weekend, it's people leaving transit, shopping, and movies and stuff, and it quiets down quite a bit. Actually, it's a fairly quiet neighborhood in the evening. So,
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak this evening? Close the public comment section. I think you also, if Captain Brown was here, gave him a good location based on the drinking accident you're telling there of a great location to set up a DWI checkpoint. So I understand what your ask is at this intersection. I know from conversation with Chris on this topic with Tom that our highway department is not supportive of nighttime flash on any of the intersections in the town. So I'll just start by saying that this board would give a recommendation if we so choose and want to do that, to refer it to highway to implement those changes on the signal. It would not require town board action to do that. That's controlled by the highway department for the regulation. Placement of the intersection would be controlled by the town board and others on that side. Timing of the signal, cycling of the signal, that's all determined by highway. So we can recommend this to go to highway. Highway department is not in support of all-way flash, so it doesn't mean that they will take our recommendation and do it. So I just want to let you know that. They are opposed to it, to my knowledge, and I believe there are no intersections in the town that are controlled by the town of Amherst Highway Department that have a cycle flash. I could be wrong. I believe if there are any in the town, they're DOT or they're for a shopping plaza or something of that nature that's not controlled by the town highway. That was where I was going to go with this. So we may have more luck going to highway department asking for a change in the default cycle on the light for the overnight hours and the programming of the signal, so that it doesn't lock on green with that leg for as long of periods.
So you're saying this turn from Worley, turning left onto Worley is a default green after whenever? Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Because that's, but if you look at that other sign, Tom,
Which one?
the one with the graph of all the different colors, I think that shows as the major, has the most traffic movement.
Yeah, 2943. Yeah, let's see when these were taken. This looks like an all-day count.
Right. So there might be an evening count that's done as well that still determines that that's the major leg, and that's the way the signal is going to ordinarily be programmed, but that's not to say that that's the way it has to be.
Yeah.
So with it being known that the town highway department is in opposition to overnight flash cycles, would this board be in favor of referring this to highway to look at the phasing of the light to see if they could make the major legs in the overnight hours be Worley to Garrison as the default green?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a little odd that the minor Worley to Worley leftbound is the steady green. You would think you'd want that stop controlled so the major leg could be a through.
Correct. That's what I would think.
Sorry, I haven't talked much all night, so now I gotta make up for it.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's re-examine this thing, see if we can get a better handle.
Is this board in favor of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what we'll do. We'll refer this to Highway through Chris for a review of the overnight hours as to where the major legs of the intersection are, and request that, if possible, to phase the light with the default being straight, Worley to Garrison instead of Worley to Worley.
Oh, God, this one was 14 years old.
Yeah, you can continue to reach out to Chris on the item, but Chris will have the minutes from this meeting and all the notes to actually refer that over. Okay? Yep, thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Yep, thank you for your patience. That closes item number 3, moves us to item number 4, which is Briar Hollow curve warning signs, various locations. This is a new build subdivision.
Yep. So, as part of the subdivision, these signs are phased, like Eric mentioned earlier. The signs that you're looking at tonight are the ones that have not yet been installed. So some of these turns have been already signed this way. This is kind of the phase 2 of sign installation. So why don't we just go one by one? So.
Yep. So
without having ability to do 2 screens, this is Winterbrook Drive at Corsica. So Winterbrook and Corsica Way here.
So I'll make a motion for the installation of the W1-1 sign at Winterbrook Drive and Corsica Way. Is there a second?
Sure.
Second by Maxwell. Any further discussion? None being heard. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 8-0 for installation of ball bank of curve advisory signs on Winterbrook Drive near Corsica Way.
Okay, so this is the other end of that. This is Corsica at the closest intersection of Winterbrook. So that's this here.
So is there a motion for installation on Corsica Way, closest to Winterbrook, as advised here, for a W1-1 sign?
Aye.
Motion by Maxwell. Is there a second? Second by Dan. Any further discussion? None being heard. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 8-0.
Lightning speed, guys.
This is Winterbrook with the closest intersection being Aviano.
And is there a motion for the installation of the W1-1 sign at Winterbrook Drive at the closest way of Aviano Way?
I got this one.
And that's a motion by Kevin, second by Kristen. Any further discussion? None being heard. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 8-0. That will close item number 4. Item number 5 has already been addressed. Item number 6, Mayor Road west of Beaumont Parkway, request to change parking restrictions on north side.
So this request came from a Meyer Road resident. Right now, as you can see, similar to what we had earlier, Melot on the south side of Meyer Road, it produces a lot of traffic and parking during their season. This is already signed from April to August for no parking along the north side. The request was to change that to no parking anytime, basically because, as we've touched on a little bit earlier, some of the baseball leagues have expanded their operational season sometimes into September. If the weather's nice in March, maybe they start early. So that's where this request is coming from, is going from the April to August 1st to a no parking anytime. Chris also asked us to, if you were to be in favor of that recommendation or not, include the bulb at the end of Meyer Road as no parking, so that it would be easier for emergency vehicles if necessary.
reason not to?
Well, the bulb at the end there is a big parking lot. I mean, it's used whenever they have tournaments. So, I mean, the other side of the road, north, hasn't been used during regular ball season, so, but the end is. I'm just pointing that out. I'm not coming up with a recommendation there, but it's completely used when they have tournaments.
Is there illegal parking going on out here like the other, on the other street?
So when they're there, since you're there for tournaments, do they just basically fill in that like a parking lot?
Yeah, I could imagine they do, yeah.
Can't imagine that. Can we paint it as a parking lot?
You know,
And basically then create a turnaround, like I'm saying, create a parking lot in the middle of it that leaves the outside open for a turnaround loop.
if I may.
Yep.
It isn't just the folks that you heard here, and in this case, there are a number of residents who've called us, the town board, to say there are parking problems related to youth sports. And it isn't just baseball. It's baseball because coming up now, it's baseball, football, soccer, and other things. Because quite frankly, there is a huge demand for those things, and you're seeing a reflection of it. And it's something that I hope Amherst Central Park will solve going forward, is that there'll be more facilities and it will spread this out. But in the case of baseball right now, I know there are actually not just teams, but actual full leagues that we've turned away because we don't have space for them. And I personally love to see kids play. I think it's better for their development, and it's good for the community. So it's hard to say no, keeping that in mind. But the problems of parking and so on, I guess my hope would be that the neighbors would be more patient, more tolerant, but I think we've just seen today that's not happening. Okay.
So I do want to add, just now that, because I'm looking at the area, the street view image, contrary to what we saw in Garnett, this stretch of Meyer doesn't have a lot of room in the shoulder to accommodate a full vehicle. So my guess would be that when cars are parked here, they're, one tire on the pavement, one tire into the grass. If there was sufficient width, maybe this is not as much of an issue, but I think what you're seeing is cars probably hanging over into the travel lane as well, because they don't want to park their car on an angle onto this property. So just an observation.
If they make them go over the double yellow, then we can't.
And I don't think they park where it says no parking.
Well,
But it's only restricted in.
the problem is they're
Right.
After August, they are,
Yes,
or they could.
they could.
There's nobody there most of that time when it's not restricted.
So it sounds like we're probably all in agreement to extend that time frame, but it's more about what do we do about the bulb out? Do we sign that or keep it as is?
I would move to just change the parking restrictions as posted to remove the August 1st, April 1st to, okay, we don't want to change it. We don't want to do the resolution as remove something. We want to do the resolution as extend the parking restrictions to year-round, to all time, any time on the, where it is currently posted. I personally think if you put the parking restriction in the curve where we know people are parking currently, they're still going to park there. We're not getting any complaints about people currently parking there anyway. It hasn't been brought to our attention from emergency vehicle response. There's nothing there at this particular time. If we don't have cars parked on that end of the road, I would think emergency vehicles could use the parking lot or something of that nature, or what's that long driveway at the end, or they can somehow finagle themselves around there. They're figuring it out now. Unless we're getting a complaint from the fire departments responding there that there's a problem, I would leave it as is.
I agree.
Where does that long driveway, the one going to the northwest, where does that go to? So it's marked private.
That looks like it's on state DOT land.
that might be an air monitoring station or something,
It's Margaret's.
It's probably the pump house.
or a pump house or something.
The other one leading off there.
There's no one going back there.
Right there is marked private. It's chained off and is it chained or gated? I forget. But
Where are you looking? Oh, this is a tower.
yeah, that's gated off anyway. You can't get
Hope not.
Nope.
I mean, whoever needs to get back to that gate's not complaining either that they're restricted from cars parked in that area. I would recommend we leave it alone unless we have a complaint about it.
So I'll make the motion.
I want to hear it again. There's enough parking out here for baseball, right? So, that's good. I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm fine.
It's not like the other street.
This is not like the other street.
Okay.
And motion to.
So we just need a
I'll make the motion to restrict the parking on the north side all year round.
Perfect.
motion from Kevin. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Dan. Any further conversation? None being heard. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Done.
Carried 8-0. That takes us through the new business section of the agenda. Is there any other new business that any board member would like to bring before the board?
Shown up today.
None being heard, we'll close the new business section and turn to old business.
So if I could, I did have a chance to speak with Mr. Spoth this morning on the phone briefly, and he wanted to give you an update on the construction signage. They do have all new signs. He said that if you see a men working sign out there somewhere, that's not the town's. And I made a note on my agenda. He said they bought the new signs about a year ago now. So if you see any of those out there hanging around, the men working signs, those are not owned by the town.
Private
So
contractor
those have all
working for the
since
town?
been updated by our highway department.
Go ahead. You got something to say there?
Yeah, because I was the one who asked about this, and I saw it. I guess I didn't see the Amherst trucks, but it was a milling operation. I assumed it was a town.
Contractors.
Did we have subcontractors doing milling and paving work in the town?
That is a question for Chris or Al both. I do not know the answer to that.
I think they do, to be honest with you. My street was paved a couple years ago. I think they are using outside contractors.
On Maynard.
We can hold
The
it
town
until-
paved?
We can hold it until Chris is back.
Yeah, the town, when they did my street, the town paved it, but it was milled by an outside contractor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Hold it.
Because it took them like a month and a half. So we'll continue to hold item A, just in regard to
Whether they're subcontractors.
the subcontract. If there's, do we need to hold it? Or do we just need to ask the question and for a follow-up of Al, if there's outside contractors, and Chris can reply to us in email? Okay, so that moves us to old business B, Kensington Avenue site distance related to landscaping. Tom, I think you have information on this one?
Yeah, so I did have a chance to take a look at the approved site plan for 2500 Kensington. The tree in question, let me pull it up just so we can all take a look.
How many times have we been here on this particular issue?
So this is the tree that has been the subject of complaints, this one here. Normally, if this was, in a town highway, it would have to be cleared from 2 to 8 feet for visibility. This is in the county right away. This tree showed up on their last approved site plan as, within the county right away. So, that'll be up to them to get a highway work permit or get a tree removal permit from Erie County in order to take that down.
Shacken says that there's a note here that says that looked into it.
Listen, I know we're not gonna change something this late, but someone really can't see around that tree? I mean, like.
Yeah, you can't. Dude, I drive by this every day. And it's filled out since then.
I was gonna ask if it looked like this still.
I was gonna say, 'cause-
That's May 2022.
You can't see through it.
Fair.
And then the next one doesn't
So,
help either.
so who has to take action, or Shackton, or the county, or what?
Shackton says I've looked into it.
Well, obviously he has it.
If it's not his property, then it
It's in
doesn't matter.
county
He
right
says
away.
you can't do it.
So I would,
We can take one of the
So we-
trucks that's over on World and just ask them to drive through it.
we could, this board could recommend Erie County remove the tree from their right of way.
That way mailbox are there, yeah.
Be done with a stupid thing.
I like that recommendation.
What's his response? Hold on, this is number B, right? What's his response?
Jeez, what a waste of time.
We have dramatic reduce trim the foliage and do not believe it currently presents a hazard. If you have specific recommendations, please advise.
Who's that?
Shackton.
Well, give it to the county.
So it's in the site plan in the county right away, refer to county.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item C, bike lane markings and signage change request.
Me too, sorry.
That's okay. I'm still wondering when the one is gonna be removed and fixed on Youngs Road.
I can understand it. I couldn't understand what all this other stuff.
I don't have anything to display for this one.
So we're just still waiting for a response from Highway as to when they're going to replace the signs.
Looks good to me.
So we'll continue to hold for the September meeting for a response from Highway as to if and when they're going to replace the signs as we requested. D, Mughal Road survey, we still do not have information back. No,
It's
I'm
listed on the,
confused by this one.
Yeah.
So there's stuff that was done here regarding the site distance calculation, but the survey that was supposed to go out was regarding sidewalk installation on Mughal. So I'm confused as to where this request for site distance, if that's somehow related to it, because we've had known site distance issues there that's caused by the bridge.
right, exactly,
So unless you're gonna remove the guardrails on the bridge,
right. That's the offending item.
that's the offending item. We'd have to change the design of the bridge to remove the construction, the concrete guardrail that's there.
I was gonna say we can hold it.
That's not gonna happen.
So we're gonna continue to hold Mughal Road for resident survey and continue to file the site distance calculation as a known issue as part of that. With that, that closes the old business section. Is there any other old business that anyone on the board has questions in regard to? We'll close the old business section and open us up for site plans and rezonings.
Good job, Ben.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for holding it.
You're welcome. And if you get a complaint about me, you were here. You were here.
You did a good job of
Guys, here's gonna be a quick introduction while you're still here.
That first ball field, though, that is a mess. And they just need to reprogram it. Like, you can't run tournaments or back-to-back games, but
She got mad at him,
you'll have
still trying to
so
hold it.
fewer
And he had
people
to-
there. And use other
But
facilities,
he has
that's
a good
all.
excuse.
I get that.
It's a warranted excuse.
It's like 3 days old.
Yeah.
So are these? I told him, I'm like, listen, it's not, you're fine.
This was supposed to be, so,
If you guys can bear with me, we'll,
so,
He's still solved everybody.
yeah.
Right, and that's why I say reprogram, just move things around a little bit, because that is a bad site.
So if you didn't get a chance to read it, the first item that Tom is gonna, thank you.
Dead-end street, side street.
So if you did not get a chance to read it, the first item that Tom is bringing up is regarding Klein Road, and there's additional information that came to us after our packets that was on the table, so if you haven't read it, just take the opportunity here. Did everybody get a copy of this?
I don't think I got it, to be honest with you. So I'll give you just a quick update. The petitioner filed for their final plat approval. They are still in need to satisfy comments from a couple town departments, including us in planning and zoning, as well as you in traffic safety. They understand, so that they're with subdivisions for final plat approval, there's a 6-month shot clock that they need to have that information completed by. They are not able to do that, so they have filed for an extension of their preliminary plat approval. However, in the interim, they'll be seeking to rectify any remaining comments. So if you could you pass me that correspondence that you guys got today or sometime? Oh, Christine goes, okay. So let me walk through some of the changes that they had made prior to, from when you guys first saw this. They now have sidewalks on both sides of the subdivision. The planning board required that. They're extending the sidewalk all the way down to Bentley Court on the east, and they're making this connection. They have a crosswalk across the driveway. Chris had previously denied this because the style of streetlights that they were using does not meet town standards. So that really was kind of the only remaining comment. As far as you guys go, they have satisfied everything you're looking for. One thing I do want to point out is that you'll notice in this new bulb, there are no parking signs because this is fire access. So there will be no parking around this bulb because that will be used for a fire lane.
Meanwhile, we all got little love notes.
Can we see the sidewalk out by the street on the enlarged view here?
There isn't one.
You're shrinking it, but I can't. Okay, how far does it go down?
What do you mean? Oh, this way?
Yeah.
Just to the edge of their property, and then picks up the existing walk.
The current sidewalk.
Sorry, I know the AutoCAD stuff is being wacky, but yeah, there's an existing 4-foot walk, so they're going to connect into that, and then all the way up through Bentley.
So they're gonna add the house on the corner of Bentley is missing the sidewalk, and we requested that they add the sidewalk.
That's correct. Yeah, so this piece of sidewalk was missing, and you guys and as well as us had asked for them to complete that as part of the project.
But meanwhile, we've all got a little love note here.
Still on mics. Yes. So just a little bit further on the process, the final plat and actually the extension of the preliminary plat is not a public hearing at the planning board. Those do not require public hearings, so that goes in front of the board for a decision only. So then, this is not an opportunity for, the planning board meeting is not an opportunity for the neighbors to get up and participate in a public hearing. That portion of the subdivision process is complete.
So say that one again?
So the final plat and the preliminary plat stages of a subdivision approval, the extension of the preliminary plat and a final plat in front of the planning board do not require public hearings. And therefore the public does not have the opportunity to engage in a public hearing. It's just a decision by the planning board.
So the planning board has basically already approved this pending a final.
So they're charged with ensuring that all the agency's comments are met, that Erie County Health has signed off, that our engineering department is satisfied with the sewer and water, and the assessor's office has assigned an address plan in conjunction with the fire department and the U.S. Postal Service. So this is what we send out is a checklist of subdivision items that need to be finalized prior to the planning board actually signing the Mylars to go to the county.
So the concerns from the resident that was presented, and there's really no.
So they are still able to comment on it. However, they won't be able to present that at a public hearing. So this will go into our file. This will be provided to the planning board. Well, this will go to Chris, but if Christine wants to send this to me, it'll be entered into the planning board record as well.
This subdivision meets all the town requirements, the survey and the lot size and frontage and everything else, right?
That's correct, yep.
So that subdivision's fine?
Yep.
Okay. The problem is Klein Road is a piece of junk. Okay, which this woman points out. Now, is she the only one that's complaining?
Throughout the whole process, no.
You know, and I haven't verified her numbers in her letter here, but, you know, somebody in the town has to make a decision. Do you want these subdivisions put on, for lack of a better terminology, substandard roads?
Being substandard road.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to.
I just gonna chime in because my backyard is on Klein Road, probably less than 1,000 feet away from where this is going in. 36 cars from 18 homes.
Speak up.
Isn't 36 cars from 18 homes is gonna have zero impact on Klein Road. The issues that exist on Klein Road remain regardless of this.
Right.
Private road going in.
Of the 12,700 cars, yeah, the 36 more cars isn't gonna.
Yeah, it's nothing.
I have other problems with Klein Road, being where I live and where I drive, and this has zero impact on it. If it helps the intersection of Hopkins and Klein to get some loving from somebody to fix that intersection up a little bit, yeah, I'm all in support of it then.
Is Klein is town or is it high, is it county?
Town.
No.
That's awesome. Oh, that's awesome.
This is the narrowest section of, this is the section of Klein Road that absolutely, for the record here, completely blows my mind. It is the narrowest section of Klein Road, and parking is permitted.
Of course.
On the road. There's no parking restrictions on Klein Road in that area, and it's the narrowest part.
They ran out of the big signs.
If there's a garage sale, the residents don't park there, but if there's a garage sale, if there's something going on, there's Amazon vehicles that are pulled over there. I honestly, I don't understand that section of Klein Road, as long as I'm on my soapbox and condescending and everything else tonight, whatever I want to do.
Money issue, Eric.
But the part that blows my mind about is the Amazon drivers on West Klein Road, right? Or is this West Klein? No, West Klein is the other side of Hopkins. Will pull into the driveways on Klein Road where there's a wide shoulder because there's a sign that says no parking. But on this section, the Amazon truck and the UPS truck and everybody else will stop right on Klein Road on the shoulder of the road and block traffic while they're there. It's just completely mind-boggling to me.
Okay, what happens if we made this section no parking?
Well, that's not before us this evening. This is just this plan. I'm just speaking in support of the person that's here, that there's other issues on Klein Road, but I don't know what this neighborhood impacts. This before us.
I have no problem. Yeah, and they've addressed our comments.
We've,
But that's not the wrong thing.
moving on. I'm off my soapbox tonight. I'm done.
It's 10 o'clock, so boxes are.
All right, this one is a request for an amendment to our comprehensive plan. So, this request, yeah, this is letter B. So, this request is for the changing of our future land use map from single-family residential to commercial mixed use. The future land use map guides development in a conceptual manner. It's the soft application of what you would see with a zoning district, where the zoning districts are the hard dimensional standards, but the town's land use map, Figure 6 and Figure 6A, our mixed use map, are meant as the town's guide to how it should develop. This piece of property was listed as single-family residential because, as existing, it is a single-family residential home, and this applicant is seeking to develop it for commercial mixed use. The first step in that process is to amend the comprehensive plan to allow them to seek a rezoning request. So this is even prior to a rezoning request. determining if this land use is appropriate for the location that it is.
On North French and where?
So this is right next to the soccer fields.
Yep, so this is the piece of property here. You can see it's just a single family home currently. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you get some context. St. Pius Church, North French Soccer, or I'm sorry, Amherst Soccer. There is, 2 commercial buildings back here, office buildings. Hindu Cultural Society to the west, and of course North French and Campbell, which you guys are intimately now familiar with. So the request is only for this parcel. That would be turned from single-family residential to something along the lines of this. So you can see this kind of, on the left here, this is the a little bit larger context, and then really this is the context of the request. So this would be this piece that they would seek to subsequently rezone if the town board ultimately approves the land use change.
It's going to be a speeding zone.
No, so in terms of what?
Just in terms of what is that building going to be? What do they want to use it for? It looks like there's handicap parking in there, so it's going to be a mixed-use building. So how many more people are bringing to that area to come in and out of that spot that's going to get out of the North French and then that Campbell Road problem that's right there that we still have yet to resolve from?
Sure. So what they're seeking is, it looks to me like just strictly retail with a second floor office or live-in office for a property manager or owner. Part of this request is looking at the traffic system, which is why it's in front of you. And if this land use, right, not take the zoning district out of it, take the use out of it, it's the overall pattern of land use in this area. So is commercial land use appropriate for this south side of North French Road? So and is this a site in the future that should remain single-family residential? Right. So that's what the request is. The zoning is different, right? The zoning deals with the dimensional standards, which limits the use, limits the intensity. This is, what is the development pattern of the overall context of the area, and is what they're proposing appropriate for this location?
And if the proposed use eventually would get to the point where it would generate more than 100 vehicles during the peak hour, then it would kick into seeker, and then they would have to mitigate the traffic.
So each action, the comp plan amendment, subsequent rezoning if necessary, and then subsequent site plan are all subject to seeker. The town's threshold for requiring a traffic impact study is 100 vehicles at peak hour. That's when you guys see the TIS. Sometimes we require them, like the subdivision on Klein Road, they use it to substantiate a waiver in between, the distance in between the intersections, if you remember dealing with that one. I don't know if this would generate 100 trips at peak hour. That's based on the use. So, it looks like what they're seeking is the NB district, which it stands for neighborhood business. So what you're going to see is smaller commercial retail, office space. You're allowed upper story residential. So what you're not going to see is, a national retailer come in here with, 85 car parks, 100 car parks. This is going to be, or is potentially going to be something that fits the neighborhood business zoning district, which I believe is what they're seeking. Yes.
So, like Chateau Terrace, but not on Chateau Terrace?
This isn't quite the intensity to me that it looks like that is, but they certainly can propose a mixture of commercial and residential.
So
I'm saying in terms of building size. Sure.
I would say that density-wise, this is less intense because the zoning district that this is in relies on the parking standards in our current code, whereas the development you just mentioned, the zoning district that that's in has less parking required than it would in other districts. So they're allowed to theoretically have more building because the land is available that would be taken up for parking, they now can build on. So,
Tom,
yes.
the current parcel of property has a curb cut for a driveway.
Correct.
Looks like on this plan, is that the curb cut remaining, or is that a sidewalk?
This looks like the existing driveway, which would be demoed. Let me just make sure. So this, where are we? There it is, and there it is. So it looks like a circular driveway. It looks like this is the one they plan on keeping.
So with that, the petitioner that's acquiring this, are they the owner of the neighboring property?
I'm unsure. But it looks like they're willing to seek a connection to this property.
Yeah, I've read some stuff on this one. What I'm asking is do we have the ability to say that we approve it as long as there's no curb cut to North French and that all the traffic flows into the existing parking lot that merges it all into one parcel of property there?
I would say you can recommend that. However, this isn't our town road, so ultimately it's up to Erie County Highways whether or not they're going to allow them lawful access to their parcel, which I believe they're mandated to. Separate from this, because this is not a given, right, and can be rescinded at any time if it's under a reciprocal easement agreement. So this really is not. You certainly can recommend it. I'm not going to tell you won't.
That we have a known problem on North French Road that exists in that pocket. Right now, it's a driveway with one car. Now we're looking at the potential of multiple cars. We're looking at the potential of cars discovering after that building is built that they can pull into there as an additional access point to get to the buildings that are in the back by using that driveway to give them now 2 lanes to make a left-hand turn versus 1 lane, which creates a slew of problems. So I would move that it's either restricted with no driveway access to North French, and it has to all go through the existing driveway, or there's no interconnect to the other property.
No interconnected at the south part.
Correct.
Why?
Because I don't want to have 4 points of access. I don't want the people that are, if you look at the existing buildings that are in the back being the gymnastics center and everybody else, we already know that there's problems pulling out of that parking lot of people trying to make the left-hand turn. So now the people that are at the gymnastics center that can't make the left-hand turn on North French, they now have another driveway to go to, and now we have another point where we have cars making left-hand turns on a spot where we know we have existing problems. I don't want cars from the businesses in the back to have the ability to have another access out to North French. I would rather shut that down completely or not have an interconnect to the other driveway.
It sounds like what you're asking for is a study of turning movements in a TIS.
Sure.
Well, we could technically ask for that.
You can ask for anything.
And you're right, by the way the gymnastics place works, they have hour programs, so everyone vacates
At the same time.
everyone else comes in. So it's not like you're going out gradually. So that's a good
Right.
idea.
If you go back there if you go there on a Saturday morning when there's soccer games and there's people making left-hand turns to get in there at the same time as people are trying to make left-hand turns into the gymnastics and dance center, it's all backed up there, and now you're creating another access point where there's cars making left turns.
We're allowed to say don't have them connect on the back, aren't we?
You can. It's kind of antithetical to the town's position on access management, but yeah.
Unless there's a left-hand turning lane on North French.
Well, we can't touch that. That's not our road.
You can't touch the curb cut either.
Right.
Exactly. So this is removed.
So if the county,
So we have one play.
So I'm gonna throttle you down here. This is just about the land use.
Is this gonna be, in the state project?
What's that?
Is this gonna be in the state project?
No.
The site photograph.
This, you're talking about?
Where's landings?
Right here.
Okay, so the state project goes beyond landings to the east, right?
I don't know the extent that it goes down North French, but I believe what this board has recommended to the county was
We have that map on the other area. We sent it right up to the, there's plenty of road width there.
Let's go with what Tom said.
So this is probably in the state project.
But regardless, the question in front of us is not any of these issues, right? The question in front of us is simply, are we okay with this line going?
And we all said yes, so that
Which is
if they build something on it, it's gonna come to us.
It's gonna come back to and then.
So they could
sure I'm in
seek,
favor
they
of it
could
now.
seek to,
Well,
so I don't want you guys, so here's a good tip to follow with the rezonings and the comp plan amendments. These are concept plans. And most of the time, after they get through the rezoning stage, you know, you think about the timeline these take. This is August. They still need to go in front of the planning board. Then they have to go in front of the town board for their public hearings, which takes 30 to 60 days. They then need to go submit a rezoning request, which is a minimum of 60 days to even get to a planning board agenda, then another 60 days to get through the town board. Then they need to submit a site plan. So by the time they do that, their idea of the tenants that they are available to pull for this site in order to develop it may change. So right now, they may be saying, yeah, this is going to be 2 retail establishments, but by the time they get to the site plan review, we might see a financial office with 3 employees that's closed on weekends.
The days you rattled off there, that's a year. They're at least a year away.
They're very far away from this, if it's even approved. So
And it's gonna hit, if you can believe the state that they're gonna do this.
That section is north, section is county.
I don't believe it.
So it should be up right now. I believe this is, I don't know if this is on the August planning board agenda or September, but those go up when we set actually when we receive the application. The neighbors don't get notified until we set the public hearing, which is usually about 2 weeks out from the meeting. So that's when the mailers go out, but the signs go up when we get the application that say planning zoning application pending.
Which everyone ignored for Chantic Terrace.
Well, it was COVID when that happened, so nobody was outside. They couldn't see the sign. They were stuck in their own house.
I saw it, I run every day. Okay, so the question is, is it okay to rezone this?
I'm okay with these.
Okay.
Okay, let's bring all those other projects down here.
So now we'll take a look at Costco.
So hold on a sec. So did we all say yes, or?
I said yes.
I don't know what the hell I'm saying yes to, but yes.
I'm gonna say no.
So this is a good one. This is Costco. The revised plan said this is on the agenda for the August meeting. If this ever loads, it's a rather large PDF.
Which one is this?
Costco.
With the issue of the traffic
This is
circle?
D.
So that's a good question.
Proof 7-1.
They're gonna install 2 signals. Those handle the traffic. They meet the requirements. So that's what they'll be. That's what they'll be proposing. Want to point out.
This is the 2 roundabouts, right?
Yes.
Because
So
the roundabouts are gonna cost more.
they've added sidewalk all along this internal drive. So this is North Bailey. This is Dick's House of Sport up at the north. And bear with me here, it's on a couple different cut sheets. They have sidewalks extending up. They have sidewalks along the internal drive, all the way down. They've reworked this intersection to align straight with this driveway here. So that makes a true 4-way. Let's see. So this sidewalk goes here and then cuts over to the Costco site, which is on this sheet. So you can see a pickup here. they've reworked this intersection to, you know what? It's much easier if we just go through Chris's comments.
That's not gonna happen.
Does anybody have Chris's comments on hand?
Fill all those parking spots, I'm not going
Ken's out with Max. I pissed off everybody tonight. I've lost all control of this meeting tonight.
So other than that, so to the extent that they could, they don't control this land to the west. So they've shifted this as much as they could to try and straighten it without. I mean, they don't own this, so they can't encroach.
And I think they were supposed to narrow it up too.
Yes, and they did down to 30. So all throughout the site, there's future sidewalks that they know aren't going to be necessary right now. However, they have future plans of some of these blank pads to expand. So they're going to install those as.
They've got so much parking there, they're gonna wanna use it for the baseball games.
We put parking restrictions on that.
So you better put in that sidewalk.
So we asked them also not to have trucks go down Beaumont. They've agreed to do that if I can find the truck turning plan. They've also, sorry, before I get there, they've reworked some of this so that.
Go any faster?
I'm trying to show you the sheets, but they're all over the place.
It's a little blurry.
Here you go. Here's a delivery truck movement. So we asked them to do two things. One, not route the trucks down to Beaumont, which they have done that. So you can see they come across here and then go northbound. Yes, and then we also asked them not to have truck access through here. It's not necessary. Their loading docks are on the north wall, so they've done that so that there'll be no truck access through here that line up to the residence.
So on the left-hand side of that truck thing up at the top there, what are they driving over? Are those islands or something?
Are you talking about right here?
Yeah.
Let me zoom in.
Those are speed bumps for trucks. Truck bumps.
Yeah, it looks like it.
And they're driving into the left turn lane where people are all queued? That doesn't look very safe.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I'm still not happy with the parking lot trucks.
Driving back behind the other buildings to connect out to Ridgely.
I thought they agreed to that.
I thought they agreed to that too.
There's got handicap lanes up there.
That doesn't work. At least something that works.
Something needs to be fixed there. That doesn't work.
You certainly can. You're the traffic safety board.
Yes. We are recommending that doesn't work. Their own plan shows that it doesn't work. So they need to fix that. And the solution is all the trucks go to Ridgely, behind the buildings to Ridgely.
Which we've already seen plans of that, I think, right?
Right, they should be going up that back road where the other trucks are coming in, and they should go behind Dick's and behind Costco, and they should exit out to Ridgely. Right up there. Everything goes back behind.
This is where most of the truck movement.
So why can't they?
So are they trying to demonstrate that that won't be used as a truck lane because they can't make the turn?
This is done. This is done using this size truck. However, I don't think that's necessarily the size truck that is going to be navigating the site at all times. As you can imagine, they obviously have semi-trucks that go to Costco, but there are also some box trucks and some smaller delivery vehicles. So I'm guessing those routes are going to be reserved for those.
Well, that's a 53-foot trailer. That's pretty standard. They don't make any smaller ones there.
But if they're using like the box trucks.
Right, that's totally different trucks.
Okay, so they need to look at that.
And as well with this, and it's not just Costco that's getting deliveries. The Delta Sonic facility also, absolutely they're probably going to be unloading semis, but there's a good chance they're going to be using other delivery methods as well.
No, those are just going to be little box trucks. soap to all the Delta Sonics. It's only gonna be stuff leaving there. There's nothing inbound.
So we'll note that. Is there anything else you want to look at on these plan sets?
So are they for sure putting in the traffic signals and not the roundabout?
Yes.
And that's for us to say whether we like it or not, right?
Well, we recommended the
Well, they meet the signals meet the warrants for the traffic, so they work.
They work, well.
Well, I was one of the undecided back in June, because you got all kinds of traffic studies and projections of what the traffic's gonna be, car traffic, okay? There's nothing for pedestrians, you know. Is there 10 pedestrians there or 1,000? I don't know how pedestrians get across a roundabout easily.
But we
So
don't
I
have
did-
to worry
that's-
about
that's
that.
a
They don't
good
have a
point,
roundabout.
I did, we sat down with their engineer and kind of went over this plan set and when they submitted it. And one of the things I asked them was about these intersections. They're gonna be fully equipped. Ped heads, crosswalks, the full gambit. They aren't just gonna be signal heads with pavement. It's gonna get the full works. However, that's not, those aren't reflected on these plan sets because that's part of the PIP drawings. So, you won't see them, but Chris will. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we're also still working with the NFTA, to be able to provide bus transport on site. So the NFTA has kind of told Benderson Development where they expect the stops to be. And Benderson has reached back out to them and said, that's great, we want to accommodate not only this site, but Consumer Square and the site they own just west of this. So there's probably going to be a little bit of reworking with that to accommodate kind of the larger development as a whole.
Consulted with UB too?
Yes, same deal.
What's the site west of?
It's
That's the Target Plaza.
no, it's just this. It's south of that. I don't know really what it's called, but
Hold on, I'm actually seeing it here.
this piece here. No, it's this piece here. It's a warehousing distribution plaza.
The next thing that.
But there's a lot of employers and employees in here, so they want to accommodate the bus transit on,
So that's a Benderson property there too?
This is too, yes. So their holdings are, this kind of whole triangle.
There's a post office in the south there. So to look to the future and then style with the traffic circle we go with.
So I'm going to note that truck delivery at, I'm going to say Key Bank intersection. We got two more to get through.
Is there gonna be any widening of Bailey and all this?
There will be a widening of Bailey.
I drove down there the other day.
How much can you widen together? It's got this big thing here. Those
Yeah,
drainage
put
ditches.
pipe in.
They'll be covered. I don't know. You tell me. You're the traffic safety board.
I mean, according to the Amherst Bee, the town already approved it, so.
Oh, you didn't see the retraction?
Oh, there was a retraction?
Oh, no wonder you didn't see it. It was up in the corner on page 6.
Big headline story, so. I mean, the only thing that I have a concern with, I think, that I've heard from everybody here is just that truck plan with the trucks going over the curb.
Yeah, I noted that, so I'll have Chris write that into his review.
At the end of the day, this thing's going. We're not stopping it.
Okay, this is, if you remember way back when, Gleason's property on Sheridan, the old Gleason's nursery. Oh, sorry, I keep rotating it. And here we go. So This was at one point a single-family subdivision. However, you know, it's changed and now it's attached housing, so they're seeking a rezoning from R3, which is one of our single-family districts, to R4, which allows for 2-unit buildings, or multi-unit buildings. So still staying residential, however, the residential form has changed.
So they don't need a 28-foot street anymore, so they can actually fit more in there. Nice move. That was the problem before when we told them
Yeah, so let's access off of Sheridan, some visitor parking, front-loaded garages, stubbed, front-loaded garages, and then a T turnaround for emergency access.
So does the private drive, so this is just a rezone?
This is the rezoning, yeah.
I'm just asking, the private drive, does that need to meet town code of towns back of 28 feet? And do we even care about that at this point?
That's a good
when it goes
question.
forward?
This one is not a realty subdivision, and therefore is not subject to our subdivision regulations. So technically, that's a private parking lot, which means the access aisle has to be 24 feet behind 90-degree parking. So this distance from here to here has to be 24 feet minimum, and probably could be 26. So normally you need 26 around a fire hydrant, and a lot of Appendix D of the fire code sometimes requires 26 feet depending on the size of the structure or the form. So that's probably what they were going with for that. So 26 feet. So we're 2 foot short of a private drive standard road.
So this allows for more density than single-family homes,
Correct.
but also solves the problem that they had of trying to fit in the 28-foot street.
Yes.
So you don't have sidewalks throughout, you only have that one.
So it comes here, yeah, around here, and then out to the public walk. So these will all be driveways, and then they have these intermittent walks besides every unit. But these will all be front door garages.
They would have to create a turnaround probably or something at the end of that one, right? No, they already have it. They got it. And this is just a preliminary for a rezone, so.
The first building looks pretty close to Sheridan Drive, right?
Yeah, but we can discuss that. This is more just for this is land use, right? Rezone?
Yeah, this is yeah, technically it's dimensional standards too, really is what you're up against. But just to let you know, in the R3 we require a 30-foot setback. Same with the R4, which is why they've labeled it here 30-foot front yard setback to a principal structure.
Yeah, but you come down, it gets closer.
Yeah, but they still got 39.
It's 39 here.
39, they gotta be 30, they're 9 feet.
I don't have any comments on this one.
No.
Okay. Are we good?
See the house?
Rezoning, right?
This is rezoning, yep. This will come back for site plan approval.
Forest that came here as like a modular. It's like 2 stories high, but only half the roof. It's like.
So this is the Ashley Green subdivision at 160 Transit. You guys at sketch plan asked for this full connection to Ruby Lane, which they've provided. They'll be crossing the culvert with this crosswalk, sidewalks on both sides.
Love it.
The mailbox units are up here at the apex of the road. Yes.
Couldn't give that some. Yeah, I don't really like those mailboxes on the inside curve. I'd rather they be on the outside curve. Based on the other meetings that we had this evening with visibility.
Well, we wanted it on the inside because when it's like you're coming home from work and you're picking up your mail, we didn't want them to be on the other side.
Yeah, but the driver is coming home. The driver is to the middle of the road, on the wrong side of the street.
So you want them to come over on the other side.
They're gonna be on the wrong side regardless. I'm saying is you're gonna have a car parked on the inside curb. I don't want it on the curb.
Is not good. I do like it away from the intersection.
They have to put it on the curb because that's where it fits. It should be on the outside curb, not the inside curb. Don't they have to create like a little bulb out or something? Or they could leave it there if they create a wider road there with a little bulb out for a car to pull over.
Yeah, this will be a public road.
But it isn't a 90-degree curve. You do have a little bit of a straightness in there. Mm-hmm. That would be my only concern. But is it going to stop it? No. Just give residents something to complain about. My board tenure is going to be up to let him complain. And then he's going to be your new chairman. Jennifer's going to be your new chairman. You're going to take it over. Mark, how about you? You want it?
And they've incorporated this turnaround after the culvert, which we've also been pushing for.
Which will then
Instead
eventually
of
become.
just stumping before it, they're actually going to have to build the culvert, cross it, and then put the turnaround in.
That's a dead end there, right?
This is a dead end, yeah.
They got sidewalks across it.
So we'll make a time about the mailbox, but everything else they've satisfied, so. That's it. That's all I got.
We still have a quorum to adjourn.
What if we didn't?
We were stuck here until someone comes back.
No, they never
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn. I'll make the motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Jennifer. Is anyone opposed to going home tonight? Motion carried